look back at the outcome list.
InsyaAllah. Okay. Alright. So, okay. I think kita boleh mula Syam. Mariam, kita boleh mula. Can we start?
Boleh.
Boleh ya? Okay. Syam boleh start recording ya. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alright. Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. A very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Karol Adnan bin Ibrahim from Pusat Penanganan dan Kesejahteraan Anak Akademik UTM, KAIS. And I would like to welcome you to all to our another session of training by Associate Professor Technologies Dr. Aisyah binti Abu Bakar, all the way from University of Malaysia Pahang. Today's session is entitled Alternative and Flexible Assessment, a tool to promote deeper learning. So Alhamdulillah, we are very glad to have you, PM Dr. Aisyah. Assalamualaikum Dr. Sihat?
Waalaikumsalam. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so before we begin, kita mulakan kita punya sesi kita dengan ulumul kitab Al-Fatihah. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Shiratal ladzina an'amta 'alaihim. Alhamdulillah. And let us pray that perhaps semoga that Allah SWT will make this session run smoothly without any hiccups, and this session will bring benefits to all of us, inshallah. So before we begin, here's a few more reminder to all participants. If you could kindly mute your mic to avoid any distraction. If you have any question, please kindly unmute your mic and introduce yourself and say your question clearly. You can also use the chat below in order to write all the questions, and I will try to bring them up from time to time. Okay, this session will be about 3 hours. There'll be a short duration of break in between. And a recorded version of this webinar will be available in our Facebook, YouTube, and KAIS website. And also in the chat below, you also the link to the PowerPoint slide is also provided, so you can go ahead and click and download the material for today's lecture. Okay, so before that, allow me to introduce our guest speaker here, Associate Professor Technologies Dr. Aisyah binti Abu Bakar. She is basically one of the recipients of the National Teaching Award for the Engineering Cluster in the first National Academic Award in 2006 by the Ministry of Higher Education. And later, she was awarded the Chancellor Award for Excellence in Teaching in 2007 by University Malaya. She was an expert and panel and contributor to the publication of National Guidelines to Good Practice Curriculum Design and Delivery, CDD, by the Malaysian Qualification Agency, MQA. Her research work on assessment in higher education includes e-assessment in tertiary learning, ESTEL, has led to several awards nationally and internationally. She was seconded twice to the Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia, as the Director of Academic Development Management Division. She also played a major role in driving the Ministry of Higher Education main policies or initiatives, especially under shift number 1, which is holistic, entrepreneurial, and balanced graduates, as well as shift number 4, quality TVET graduates, and shift number 9, globalized online learning of Malaysian Higher Education Blueprint, 2015 to 2025. Several guidelines established were guidelines for the implementation of 2U2I, 2 years of university and 2 years of university, study mode, mata pelajaran umum 2.0, and framing higher education 4.0. She also developed several policies and implementation with a direct distribution includes Malaysian English Assessment, MEA, Flexible Education, Higher Education Curriculum 4.0, 2U2I, mata pelajaran umum 2.0, TVET Teacher Standard, and ASEAN Student Mobility and Transnational Education. She's currently holding a post as a director for the Center of Instructional Resources and E-Learning, University Malaysia Pahang. So with that introduction, I would like to welcome again Associate Professor Dr. Aisyah to UTM. We are very glad to have you here. And alhamdulillah, it's 2 o'clock, 2:03, so we would like to hand over this session to you. And over to you, Dr. Aisyah. Bismillah.
Thank you, Dr. Hairul. And thank you so much to KAIS Administrative for hosting this webinar. I would like to personally thank PM Dr. Jaria, Pengarah KAIS, and also Dr. Mariam, who are with us today. And the rest of so honestly, I'm quite nervous request from Kais. The reason why I say that I'm quite nervous to actually deliver this is because this topic is something that I never deliver before. Nevertheless, this is also the topic that that is not something that I'm not familiar with. So let's begin. The topic given to me basically is this. This is the original topic. Although I think the one in the poster that you get is slightly different, but I don't think that is a matter because at the end of the day, the content is still going to be the same. I was given this topic on alternative and flexible assessment. That is the first thing that catch me when I got this topic. I am very familiar with alternative assessment. I have been practicing alternative assessment for very long, and until today, I still practicing alternative assessment. But I never come across the term flexible assessment. So when I got this topic, I was quite excited, and I kind of tell myself this flexible assessment is actually similar to alternative assessment. So I told Dr. Khairul, I'm going to do a little bit of research and find out whether they are the same and whether they are different. And obviously they are not the same and they are not totally different. Basically, this is the topic that we're going to explore today. But at the end of the day, the aim for us to explore this topic is to, at the end of the day, to find out how we can enhance our students' engagement and also performance. I think that's the main thing that we're going to discuss today. So how are we going to enhance our students' engagement and also performance? So if we keep engaging with our students, but they are not actually performing the way we would like to perform using either alternative assessment or flexible assessment, I don't think we gonna hit the actual intent of why we use alternative assessment or flexible assessment. Before I begin, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to thank Dr. Fahmi. I think maybe now he is a professor in UTM. Fahmi Miskun. Ada ke Dr. Khairul? Dia kot saya rasa Dr. Fahmi. Because the illustration that I use on this particular page, if you have a look at it, this is actually the illustration that Dr. Fahmi shared with me when I was at the ministry on the draft of guideline for TVET teachers. At the moment, I think that guideline has not been out yet, but I think it will soon be out and about. You can see that one of the staff at the back, I think he is wearing UTM overall. So I suppose that this picture is authentic, is from UTM. So that's the reason why I take time to find this picture and put it as a background. And it's also related to alternative assessment, and also it's related to testing. So let's have a look what this topic is all about. So before we begin, I would like each and every one of us to go to Mentimeter, and I'm sure you have one already installed in your mobile phone or whatever apps you use. If you put in the code 1919 2279, I would like you to participate in this Mentimeter. Is it okay if I just wait for a few minutes? Let me find out. I can just I need to look at my Mentimeter now. I use exam and test questions. Let me, this morning we had a rehearsal and I should be able to change from one screen to another without having to close one. But I'm not quite sure why now that when I broadcast everything, it's gone to full screen. Right, okay.
You can see your screen now.
Right, okay. Some of you said that because it's compulsory, it is an assessment tools. Now it's coming in because it's simple. Yes, it's simple, it's quick, it's easy. Yes, it's measurable. So everybody's answers are all correct at the moment. There are only 4 participants at the moment. Let's wait a little bit for people to join and come in. We can see that compulsory now getting bigger. So majority of us use exam, test, quiz because it's compulsory. It's simple, it's appropriate tools, it's important, it's quick, effective, yes. It's one of the evaluation method, yes. It's cognitive part of the student, correct. Because students are familiar, that's great. I like that answer. Students are familiar and lecturers are also very familiar with it. It tests student, it's important, it's a course requirement, it measures understanding. Okay, it's easy. But you can see that majority agree that it is compulsory. You can do quiz. It's a common tools, yes, it's a common tools. Okay, we got 20 participants now. We'll let it go. But I think we kind of agree from this word cloud. This is where I think Dr. Khairul and also Dr. Mariam can help me out because this is an institutional kind of decision. I'm not sure whether I am correct to say that in UTEM, final exam is compulsory and it attribute to kind of 30% or 40% towards a course evaluation. Betul ke, Dr. Khairul?
Yes, yeah. In general, yes. I think majority of the program here, since we are technical universities, and basically it's mandatory to have a final exam. But I think there are also in certain faculty there are also some courses which I think they start to have this courses without a final exam. Yeah.
Right, right. So I think that concur with the response that we get from the Mentimeter that exam, test, and quiz to a certain extent is compulsory in UTEM. It may not necessarily be compulsory in other institution. And honestly, is it compulsory as required by the Malaysian Qualification Framework? The answer is not necessarily. Because if you look at the program standard, normally final exam is actually being put as an example. However, the institution may decide whether exam and also final exam must be one of the component in the course evaluation. But that is not really what we would like to discuss today. So what we would like to start, although our topic today is indeed flexible and also alternative assessment. As we had a little discussion before we begin this webinar, actually, I mentioned to PM Dr. Charia, Dr. Mariam, and also Dr. Khairul that flexible assessment is actually one step slightly higher up in comparison to examination and alternative assessment. So with that, I would like to go slow, and I would like to start with the premise that we are all comfortable with, and that is why I actually ask everybody, do you use final exam test quiz and all that? And from the Mentimeter, I get a confirmation that everybody is actually familiar with that assessment method. And in fact, it is to a certain extent it is done because it is compulsory. Let's now have a look at what is the main feature of examination. And for your information, examination actually, regardless of whether you call it small test, pop quiz, midterm, or final exam, they are all examination. Okay, so when we talk about examination, be it in a form of final, be it in a form of midterm, be it in a form of test, or small quiz, right? What are the main features? What are the similarities between all these assessment methods? And if we look from these slides, basically all this type of assessment, which we put it under a general term, examination. We normally conduct examination same time in the same space, and we give students same set of questions. So that is the first main feature of examination. And before the pandemic, when we would like students to sit for examination, we make sure that they were all put in the same room in an observed condition, and normally we put them far from one to another, simply because we would like to make sure that during the exam the work by the student is indeed individual soul work, or the work have to be original and have to be authentic from individual students. So that's the whole reason why we actually put them in an observed condition, because we want their individual soul work, and because also we give them the same questions in the same time, in the same space. And normally, if we reflect on how we normally conduct our examination, right, we during the examination we give students no feedback. We do not actually tell them how to improve this and that. So basically, whether student can answer the question or whether they were not able to answer the question, that's it. It's a one-off chance. So it is to a certain extent is high stake to a certain extent, and it's normally in a form of pen and paper. And also, if we reflect on the feature of examination type of assessment, we normally do not give students the question before the exam time, right? We do not expose them the question before the exam time. So this is the main feature of examination type. And we can look from this illustration. Why I choose this illustration is to actually convey a message whether or not examination is fair to different kind of learners, whether examination measure different kind of ability. And in relation to flexible education, is it flexible for our different learners to tell you that I already actually achieve or get that particular learning outcome, because you do not actually use the assessment method that is in favor of me. Just because of that, you actually tell me that I was not able. So this is basically some of the issues behind examination. So when we were hit by pandemic COVID-19, right? Please stop me at any point if you have anything you would like to add on, or you would like to disagree or agree at any point during the presentation. And if we look at the condition where we are now, and last year when we were hit by pandemic, and at that time, for example, like us in UMP, it was only not 3 weeks actually. It was during the final exam time that PKP 1.0 was imposed. And we had to stop our final exam because students cannot go to the exam hall. And we were given 3 days before we had to convert our final exam into online remote final exam. So you can imagine the chaos. I'm not quite sure about you, Tem, but that is how we faced it last 2 semester. And at that time, you can imagine that, especially me, I asked myself, how can I conduct my final exam with that kind of questions that I've written before, which I've written the questions, same question that I'm going to give to each and every one of my students, but now they are doing it in a remote condition that they can open the book. I do not have any proctoring device and so on and so on. There's so much challenges when we had to do it not only online but in a remote condition. When we talk about online remote, you can also actually do your final exam or do your examination type of assessment in an observed condition. You can put student in a computer lab and you can ask student to sit for exam, for final exam. That is online exam, but that is not remote online exam. When PKP 1.0 and now we are in PKP 3.0, students not only have to sit the exam in an online environment, that they are also have to sit in a remote condition. So I remember there has been quite a lot of discussion among students, parents and all that. Waktu peperiksaan, saya boleh cakap bahasa Melayu sikit Dr. Khairul? Is there any international participants? Okay. During the exam, some parents actually sit with the student and also the rest of the family sit there and help students to answer the questions. Itu satu perkara yang saya rasa kita semua tahulah cerita-cerita macam tu. Dalam masa yang sama, actually during the exam, students who stay outside the campus or even though who stay inside the campus as well, during the exam, they just stay in one room all together, and they answer the same exam question together. So they can actually look at their friends' answer, this answer, and they can just cheat and they can copy each other's answers. So with that in mind and with that stories and all that, I decided to look at in what way I can combat students from cheating, from copying each other. So there are plenty of basically advice that you can find from the internet, and this is the one that I use until now, and it still works fine for me. And you can see that there are 14 basically tips or strategies, simple strategies that we can actually adapt, okay, to run our final exam. And out of these 14, I use at least 8 to 10 of these strategies which work fine for me. But when we actually do this, it is not enough only to use one strategy to make sure students are not actually cheating during the online exam, online remote. So I decided not only to rely on one particular strategy. So what I did when I had to run my final exam in a remote online environment, I also rephrased my exam question so that my exam question is authentic in nature. Okay, so this is the part that we're going to discuss again and again in this webinar, how to create an authentic assessment instruction. If it's examination, how can we construct authentic exam question so that we can give students the same exam question, but they cannot produce same answer. So this webinar is not dedicated for that. So I will not go through with you how can you convert your normal exam question into authentic exam questions so that students cannot copy each other, because there is a technique to do that. So by combining these two strategies, one is taking care of how cheating can be reduced. Another strategies is actually rephrasing the normal exam questions so that it is authentic in nature, such that student cannot use other students' answer on their behalf. So by combining these two strategies, I managed to get away from the problem of students sitting for remote online examination where integrity is down the drain. So I still managed to make sure that my students' answers are all different, and cheating is almost 90%. In the first cohort, I got all students' answers are different from each other. They are authentic in nature, although it is a written one. So one of the quickest way to get students to answer differently, although you give them the same question, is get students to justify their answers by them having to record their justification and submit voice recording. Okay, and another technique, if you are interested in, is to get students to actually relate to their personal experience, or get students to actually use whatever that they have around them during the exam to answer the exam questions. So that is what we meant by authentic. So you can see that even I myself, okay, having to put extra effort actually when I have to use examination, okay, to assess students whether or not they already achieve certain learning outcome. If I use examination, you can see that if it's in the current condition, remote online, okay, I need to put extra effort. The extra effort that I have to put in is to make sure that they don't cheat. I have to design new exam questions such that it is authentic in nature, it's hot in nature. But before the pandemic as well, we are also doing the same thing. We have to make sure that we provide exam hall so that student can be observed. We have to have schedule for invigilators to observe for every exam session. So you can see all this effort is actually towards what? Is towards ensuring students don't cheat. Is towards ensuring integrity of examination is observed. To a certain extent, it was argued by one of the renowned speaker that I attended her webinar. She mentioned that when we use examination, regardless of be it in a remote online or be it in a physical face-to-face, we actually start with a premise of mistrust. When we talk about mistrust, meaning that kenapa kita kena buat soalan supaya student tak meniru? Kenapa kita nak observe student supaya student tak meniru? So to certain extent, bila kita letak student dalam peperiksaan ataupun bila kita pilih pemilihan peperiksaan itu sendiri sebagai assessment tools itu, actually kita dah letak satu di dalam mind kita yang kita tak trust pelajar kita untuk bagi dia punya own ability, to show their own ability. So that was the argument lah about examination, and that is why some teachers and especially now with the COVID, people start moving away from examination type of assessment, be it test, quiz, final exam and all that. People now start transforming or moving away from exam, and they are moving towards alternative assessment. So why alternative assessment? I personally, as I mentioned to you, have used alternative assessment for quite some times, and until now, I still use alternative assessment in my course. I'm a big fan of alternative assessment. I use assignment, I use problem-based learning, I use case-based to assess my student. I really do not like examination. And I did not know that the reason that I do not like examination was because of this trust and mistrust. However, it is a good argument to have a look at it this way. So, what do I mean by trust and mistrust? One thing about alternative assessment, right? Alternative assessment, if I can just go to this slide first about trust. Alternative assessment is basically by definition, if you look at definition first, um, it is an assessment where we actually give students tasks for them to perform, to complete. It is normally authentic in nature. When we talk about authentic in nature, this is where we can get students to actually now connect to their own experience. And also we can assess, we can put student in an assessment condition such that the assessment condition mimic the real situation. And we are not focusing on that one time off session. Contohnya final exam tu pukul 2 sampai pukul 5. If you perform, you perform. If you don't perform, you don't perform. However, alternative assessment is a process oriented over a period of time, so that if students, for example, do not perform at the first hour, through feedback and through guides and through facilitation, we can help students to improve over time. So this is the beauty about alternative assessment. And if you look at alternative assessment definition in other sources, for example, this is from Dr. Fauzia UUM, who has given lots of webinar on alternative assessment to various institutions. You can see the same keywords crop up, such that alternative assessment is about authentic assessment. It's about connecting students to real world of work, connecting students to real experience. It is related to community, it's related to industry. And what's important is that alternative assessment is indeed performance-based. So when we talk about performance-based, meaning that we have to ask students to do something. So when we talk about having to do something, there must be steps for students to do. So the students will have to go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 in order to perform the task. And it's normally open-ended in nature, such that it has multiple answers. So this is where I think both students and lecturer need to move away from their comfort zone of having to do things where there is only one correct answer. So we can see that this is the main feature of alternative assessment. And if we look at another source of alternative assessment, is actually from UPM. You can see that the same main features crop up from all these documents. So what about the strength of all these alternative assessment? And if we look at the learning theory, I know that in Malaysia, learning theory is not a compulsory module in lecturers training program. Kalau dekat UK, learning theory module is compulsory for all lecturer to sit. So this is the main difference. So if you look at this particular learning theory, one thing about alternative assessment, the fact that it's a task-based, you can see the illustration here. This is our student, okay? Our student would like to actually pick the fruit from the tree, but because the fruit is actually high, therefore the teacher's role is actually to provide an extra help so that students will have the ability to actually pick that fruit. So one thing about alternative assessment, we start with a premise that we trust students have the ability, have higher ability than what the student has now at the beginning, right? So I am now using what we call the ZPD theory. And what the ZPD theory or Vygotsky zone of proximal development theory is all about is that when we put when we use alternative assessment, we believe and we put student in a position where we know student only have certain degree of ability, right? But we also believe that student has a higher possibilities, higher ability to do much bigger thing, much complex tasks and all that. So how can we get students to achieve their potential zone, which is at the outer circle here, is by us helping them through that assessment activity, helping them to expand this inner circle so that student will actually uh, uh, move the circle bigger to the outer circle. So that is what the ZPD learning theory is all about. So alternative assessment, if we use alternative assessment, if we do not understand the learning theory behind alternative assessment, apa yang saya risau ataupun apa yang saya takutkan ialah satu, on the lecturer's side, we can easily feel demotivated kalau student tak expand dia punya potential ataupun bila kita guna, for example, let's say we use problem based learning or project based learning, kita tak nampak pun student ada improvement in their report writing skill. Kita tak nampak pun student ada improvement in their teamwork. Kita tak nampak pun student ada improvement in their communication skills. So we can get demotivated. And I think we are all, to a certain extent, perhaps can agree to my point, because currently I'm supervising, for example, several final year students, right, for their final year project. And I think each and every one of us as lecturer have experienced something similar. When you supervise your final year student project or integrated design, do you notice that students are still at final year, still struggling in coming up with good report, technical report? They are still struggling in
Dr. Aisyah? Hello, Dr. Aisyah? Okay. Okay, Dr. Aisyah boleh dengar?
Saya boleh dengar?
Okay, go ahead.
Dr. Khairul boleh dengar saya? Can
Boleh.
So if we look at if we reflect on what we experience with our final year student, I think we can start asking ourselves questions. Before they actually reach that final year stage, they must have gone through many alternative assessments. I'm sure other lecturers in the lower years has already given them assignments after assignments, lab work after lab work, and yet we cannot actually observe or see the actual outer circle being expanded or fully developed. So the question is where it gone wrong. So this is where we're gonna have a look at how can we improve our current practice of alternative assessment, so that we can ensure we can ensure that we will get the true benefit of using alternative assessment. So that's what alternative assessment is all about. So let's move on to the topic given to me, alternative assessment and also flexible assessment. If we have so far clarified what examination is all about, examination is one type of assessment, alternative assessment is another type of assessment, And now let's explore flexible assessment, the one that UTEM actually gave me, and I find it a big challenge, but I like this actually. So what is flexible assessment? This is the flexible assessment, a write-up given to me by UTEM from the performer of this webinar. And you can see that it says that flexible assessment is a student-driven assessment. Okay, normally assessment is lecturer-driven. Okay, because lecturer is the one who designed the assessment, who actually prescribe the assessment. When I talk about prescribed assessment, lecturer yang tentukan apa jenis assessment type, when, how it will be assessed, at what venue and at what means assessment will be carried out. So that is the normal stereotype assessment, especially examination type. Okay? But if you look at flexible assessment is a student-driven assessment. When we are talking about student-driven assessment, that means that students are the one who make decision. Okay, how can you meaning lecturers, how can you best assess me so that I can prove to you that I already achieved a particular learning outcome? So that's what it is. So basically, this flexible assessment is a student-driven assessment. Responsibility is on the students, and the flexibility that need to be negotiated between lecturers and also students is in the form of the environment, the theme, the mode, the time of assessment. Okay. And there's also something that is non-negotiated in flexible assessment. The thing that is non-negotiated yang tak boleh kita negotiate dalam flexible assessment is obviously the learning outcome, what it requires in the learning outcome. So for example, we have learning outcome number 1, LO1. Let's say LO1 is actually C2. So if the students are mature enough, and let's say the C2 requires students should be able to describe something. Describe. So with flexible, normally, if it's not flexible assessment, lecturer can actually give student one question in a final exam and can ask student to do a presentation, or can actually get student to do assignment where student need to submit a report. Okay, so this is normally what we do. But with flexible assessment, this prescribed assessment method and how it will be done will be negotiated between lecturers and student. So student can say, okay, I would like to do my assessment for LO1 because I'm not good in examination. I would like to do it in a video presentation. And another assessment, another component of it, I would like to do it in let's say in a concept map. So if students said that they would like to do it that way, and if students said that I would like to do it remotely online, okay. So this is flexible assessment. This is a practice of flexible assessment because the assessment method is defined by student and negotiated with the lecturer. So personally, I see flexible assessment is something that is of at a higher level up. The question is, do we have to practice flexible assessment now, especially in UTEM? That one, I leave it to your institution to make a decision. But as far as what flexible assessment is all about, it is what it is as I described to you earlier on. And if we refer to another article that talks about flexible assessment, and I would like to congratulate UTEM for bringing up this webinar and this topic is because Malaysia is currently paying attention to inclusive practice. Inclusive practice is not something new, for your information, in higher education. When I was in Manchester in 2011, when I put myself in the staff training program at Manchester Metropolitan University, during that time I was in sabbatical. The two modules that I was not familiar with that I enrolled was inclusive practice and also learning theories. And inclusive practice is also another module in the UK that is compulsory for all lecturers. So what does this inclusive practice is all about, and why flexible assessment is inclusive in nature and help us to so-called embrace inclusive practice that is currently now the in thing throughout the world. And I will tell you why is it the in thing throughout the world now. When I was in the UK, the way inclusive practice was introduced was that they have quite a lot of students. When I was in the US as well, another training on high impact practices in Los Angeles. University dekat luar negara, for your information, student dia all ni pelbagai tu. We thought student kita pelbagai. Sebenarnya student kita yang masuk universiti kita ni tak pelbagai sangat. Ataupun mereka pelbagai, cuma kita yang tak meraihkan kepelbagaian pelajar. Why I'm saying is that because kalau macam dekat US, student dia memang enroll to the university. However, at the same time, their students are actually working part-time. There are also students who are single parent. There are also students who are kalau dalam bahasa kita ni OKU lah, disabilities. There are also students who have other health problems. So education by right is accessible for anybody, and that is why this inclusive policy or inclusive practice is being highly emphasized in at least in these two countries that I have experienced personally, because they want to make sure, contohnya macam saya punya colleagues lah, masa di Manchester tu yang datang training sama-sama dengan saya, she's a single mother. Okay, so she can only actually walaupun dia single mother, dia ambil degree walaupun orang lain pergi masuk kelas macam biasa, tetapi dia belajar dekat rumah through digital material provided by the teachers. Okay, from time to time dia akan join dia punya colleagues and do dia punya practical works or also other projects and all that. So all these are what we call inclusive practice. So flexible assessment is actually an assessment that allow inclusive practice to be conducted or to be embraced. Kita tak tinggalkan anybody or any students left behind just because they have different condition. Okay, and what big different about flexible assessment and prescribed assessment yang kita practice sekarang ni? Kita letak student semua kena sit for final exam same time, bukan same time saja, synchronous pula tu. Bayangkan so kita dah lah hormat langsung pasal inclusive practice ni, tak hormat langsung ke pelbagaian pelajar kita. Kita paksa pula student sit for prescribed examination or assessment. Kalau kita compare dengan flexible assessment not only inclusive, meraihkan kepelbagaian dan background pelajar, their ability, disability, whether they are local, whether they are international students and all that. They are also, flexible assessment is also learning focus. So term-termnya ni saya nak kena explain sikit. So what do we mean by learning focus? Alternative assessment previously saya ada mention tentang process. process-oriented. So you can see now all these terms need to be carefully understood. When we talk about process-oriented, process-oriented ni sama dengan apa yang disebut dekat dalam flexible assessment sebab learning focus. Fokus dekat sini ialah students punya learning experience itu yang menyebabkan dia at the end of the day mencapai learning outcome tu. Kita bukan sangat nak tengok end product. Bila kita kata end product, dalam assessment ni there are two things. One is bila kita assess, satu kita kena tanya diri kita. Kita assess end product ke kita assess proses ataupun learning focus tadi tu. Katalah ini student kena buat report. At the end of kita bagi student assignment, and let's say the assignment use project based, a small project base of let's say 40%. Nak kata small pun tak adalah small, about 40%. Let's say 40% over, for example, 7 weeks. Okay. So adakah kita bagi student markah on the end product, that is report, and also at the end of the day adalah presentation, presentation on these two items. That student actually do it and we measure it at the end of the process. Bayangkan 7 minggu, 7 weeks. That is what we normally do. Although kita buat alternative assessment, normally what we do is we always measure end product. So this is what we call end product, dua item ini. Tetapi flexible assessment, and if we really understand what alternative assessment is all about, we are not assessing end product only. And in fact, we are not focusing on the end product. Apa yang kita nak capai ialah macam mana kita nak pastikan, macam mana kita nak assess supaya end product ni mencapai quality dan mencapai what is supposed to be. So what we do is we assessing all these steps. Okay. And if student need to do presentation, we need to check their ability. Kita kena buat diagnosis dekat sini. Apa student punya ability to present at the beginning before we put them into that assessment process. And then let's say 2 weeks after that, we need to check whether the students are now developing a little bit of skills on how to present. And then perhaps 2 weeks before the presentation, we need to run a mock presentation so that we can find out whether students are now ready and has the ability to present. And throughout all these checking or assessment that we conduct, we need to give student feedback. So this is what flexible assessment is all about. So when we talk about feedback, what this article actually talks about is that flexible assessment is an assessment not only is inclusive, it is learning focused. So this is the learning process that we are talking about. It is also transparent. So what does this article talk about transparency and shared is that when we lecturers know that students are actually struggling in producing good technical report, we have to sit with the student and be transparent with the student how that student can actually improve from time to time. And we share our expertise, we share our feedback with students, and students share their struggles and also share their disability in order to perform that particular task with us. So that is what it means by transparent and also shared. So this is what flexible assessment is all about by its definition. And if you look at the flexibility based on the definition or based on the write-up given in UTEM Proforma to me, it says that flexibility can be in a form of mode and type of assessment. It can be in a form of time, in a form of theme, and also in a form of environment. Earlier, when we had a discussion, I was asked to elaborate elaborate a little bit more on the environment. But before we go into that, we can see that when we talk about flexible assessment, what is negotiated in flexible assessment? If we need to practice flexible assessment and if UTEM allow you to practice flexible assessment, how flexible we want to be? Do we just want to make flexibility in a form of student can choose the type of assessment? Mode ni lain mode ni ialah yang ini 3. Type of assessment ni maknanya can student choose, okay, untuk LO1 I want to do this, I want to do this. Untuk student 2 or LO1 I want to do this. Kind of flexibility that we would like to open up to our students. So these are the 4 aspects of flexibility. Are we going to just open up one aspect of flexibility, or are we going to open up the second aspect of flexibility, time? Okay. Bila kita kata time ni, are you ready, or can you allow your student to decide when they would like to sit for their assessment that they choose? Tough kan? Sebenarnya, to be honest, bukannya tak pernah dibuat orang benda ni. Dibuat orang selalu dan pernah dibuat orang sebelum kita. Kita ingat apa yang kita buat in higher education sekarang ni macam canggih. Tak, apa yang kita buat sekarang ni sebenarnya kita tak canggih. Why do I say that? Okay, for example, I attended another webinar. Okay, yang UK punya lah. In a TVET sector, because we both, UTEM and also UMP, we both are MTONs. We know we are TVET, higher TVET institution. So bila kita kata higher TVET institution, we are talking about competency based, terampil tak terampil. Okay, separuh orang kalau tak cakap kompetensi pun, learners, they are slow learners, they are fast learners. Kenapa yang fast learner dengan slow learner kita suruh ambil exam pada masa yang sama? Okay. And for example, polytechnics in London, okay, has many years, way back, many years before this, before the pandemic, they practice flexibility such that bila apa-apa yang melibatkan competency, practical work, student have to, for example, kalau in automotive kena repair kereta ke whatever, when the students are ready, they are ready. If they are ready, they can actually tell the supervisor, okay, or the lecturers, I'm ready to be assessed. Would you like to see what I did? Kalau dia dah sudah repair motor, for example, okay, takkan nak tunggu sampai week 14 baru nak suruh dia repair balik, nak tengok dia boleh repair ke tidak. Dia dah habis repair motor, tengoklah. Similarly, if we reflect on this, okay, nanti kalau saya cakap medical TVET dia pemarah pula tetapi let's open up, let's open our hearts and open our mind here, because I was also told that this webinar is supposed to be an eye opener. Kalau kita tengok dekat medical school ataupun dekat dentistry, sebab saya dulu di UM saya rajin lah pergi dental school and work with the students lah, jadi patient student. So when the students actually already done the procedure, tampal gigi ke, cuci gigi ke whatever, bila dia buat, waktu dia buat, the lecturer actually give them feedback. Okay, lecturer dia akan check. So this is what we call process-oriented assessment. So the lecturer check step 1 you dah buat betul, step 2 you dah buat betul, okay, good, not good, what you need to improve, then the lecturer pergi pula kepada student yang lain. Lepas tu bila student ni dah siap, the student will actually call dia punya supervisor and also the lecturer to assess. Jadi bukannya semua orang lepas 3 jam baru semua orang di assess dalam satu masa, no. If we look at the competency based kind of assessment, they are highly, by right, they are supposed to be flexible. The assessment or the exam has to be on time and any time whenever that the competency is reached. bila kompetensi itu telah dicapai oleh individu itu. So similarly, a good thing about what we had discussion that we had this morning dengan PM Dr. Jaria. PM Dr. Jaria ada mention lah juga, kalau tak silap saya ataupun Dr. Mariam, ada juga mention pasal apel. And if you look at how apel work, kan, kita apel ni is actually a kind of recognition that we give to a candidate based on evidence that they prove that they have achieved certain competency ataupun outcome. Dan outcome itu dia achieve bukannya dalam masa yang sama dengan orang lain. Dia bukan sit for satu exam yang standardized itu. They don't sit for standardized exam. Tapi dia menunjukkan apa yang dia buat tu dalam portfolio. So this is about flexibility aspect of time for us to have a look at. So apa yang dimaksudkan dengan theme? So this is where I would like kalau Dr. Jaria is here and also Dr. Mariam is here, maybe help me out in case I misinterpret what is meant in that write-up. Apa yang kita maksudkan dengan theme? Bila kita bagi student alternative assessment, let's say kita bagi student problem based ataupun project based. Okay. Kadang-kadang bila kita bagi student case based, kita bagi student sama case semua orang ke, ataupun student have kita ada tema, tetapi student can choose within that theme. So bila kita kata kita ada tema ni, contohnya okay, kalau macam saya lah, saya ajar subjek soil, takkan saya nak bagi student tengok case structure tetapi ada sikit-sikit related to soil. Tak boleh lah kan. So tema dia have to be still my own subject, which is geotechnical engineering. However, we need to provide choice within that team. Contohnya katalah kita mengajar structure, and we would like students to learn about how the various parts of the structure works. So tema dia yang kita bagi kat student for that particular project is bridge. Tapi kita perlu bagi, walaupun tema dia bridge, bukanlah semua student kena design bridge. Maybe one group would like to look at the bridge design. One group would like to look at the construction of the bridge. One group would like to look at the failure of the bridge. One group would like to look at the physics or the innovation about the bridge. So this is what we call theme here. So we can have one theme, but flexibility is actually in terms of we give student choice, we give them ways to express their interests so that they are in control of dia punya assessment or dia punya learning. Bila kita tak allow this kind of flexibility, bila kita bagi student, kita buat alternative assessment, okay, kita bagi semua orang student kena buat benda yang sama. So kalau misalnya one group ataupun one student has that particular talent, dia is at advantage lah. Tetapi bagi student yang memang tak minat ataupun tak ada talent dalam benda yang kita suruh dia buat, dia memang disadvantage. So that is why we said that kind of practice is not inclusive in nature, sebab kita tak meraihkan kepelbagaian pelajar yang mempunyai various talent. Okay. And another thing about flexibility in flexible assessment is the environment. Students by right have to agree with the lecturer. This is where it need to be negotiated on the environment, how the assessment will be conducted. Sama ada assessment tu, kalau student tu kata saya nak buat secara face to face, saya nak buat secara physical. So the lecturer have to agree or disagree lah with the student. What if students are actually far away and students said that okay, I can do that but I would like to do it in virtual reality mode. Okay, student may also decide that I can do that kind of assessment, but I would like the assessment to be gamified sebab I ni memang budak game. I suka game. So if you give me game, I can perform better in that assessment. Okay. Or can the assessment be in a hybrid mode, or can it be technology assisted? So what do I mean by technology assisted here? The example that I've given this morning was when I was in Dubai in one of the conference with all the vice chancellor in UAE, was University of Cairo presented in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, 2012. They presented that they actually innovate their lab with robots, with robotic arms. And they have a vision that their lab can be manipulated, or students can actually do their lab remotely from their own home and comfort of their own bed. Meaning that student boleh buat lab work atas katil. Okay. And that time when the lecturer from University of Cairo presented that, banyaklah juga kecaman yang dia dapat sebab the argument was, oh, student kalau tak pergi lab, dia tak feel. Kalau dia baca chemicals, dia tak bau chemicals. Kalau misalnya lab work dia tak jadi, student do not learn, the frustration and all that. But if we look at what happening now during COVID, saya rasa UTM dengan UMP sama je kot. Sekarang ni student yang ada kelas-kelas praktikal ni semua kita letak dia sebagai tak selesai, TS. Betul ke? Can you help me out? Especially kelas yang memang kelas praktikal tu, katalah ada satu subjek tu semua subjek praktikal. At the moment semua subjek ni student tak boleh masuk campus. Neither we have lab that is that has the facility with the robotic arms for them to control in their own comfort remote places. Students dah berapa cohort ni dah memang dapat status tak selesai lah. Tak selesai maknanya dia tak buat lah lagi subjek tu disebabkan they cannot actually go to the campus. So we can see now how relevant flexible assessment is all about actually. Bukanlah kita nak consider flexible assessment ni because we are trying to be sangat. Tapi bila saya prepare bahan untuk webinar, bila saya reflect balik, sebenarnya flexible assessment ni sepatutnya dah memang sesuatu yang suka tak suka kita sebenarnya kena practice. Sebab kita dah pun di dalam, bukan lagi di ambang lagi dah. Kita dah di dalam satu situation where memang kita terpaksa conduct remote online assessment. So kalau assessment kita masih lagi dalam bentuk prescribed, masih lagi dalam bentuk non-flexible, non-negotiated, it is very, very difficult and we are running into lots of problems. And why do I say that? This is because kalau kita tengok, ini reality yang saya ambil di gambar di Malaysia, saya rasa semua kenal kot ni, yang Viviana kan nama dia. Betul ke Tyra?
Ya betul, Viviana.
Yang daripada Sabah tu kan, Viviana kan yang belajar atas pokok. Bukan nak kena belajar atas pokok, dia belajar tak atas pokok, tetapi the fact that dia kena sit for synchronous examination tu, exam sama. Dah lah exam synchronous lagi. Okay. So the only way to get the internet access is actually on the tree. You can see students are learning on the field. Kat situ tak adalah conducive nak draw, nak buat graph, semua lagi susah. Dalam masa yang sama, bila saya di UMP, saya juga tahulah daripada kita punya counselor dan bila kita mesyuarat berkaitan dengan exam, kita memang tahu our students and in fact lecturers as well. In fact, tadi pun kita ada intermittent problem with our internet. Connectivity, when we talk about remote online learning, we are talking about connectivity is the thing that we need to find out between us lecturers dengan student. Dua yang paling penting kita kena check ni dua lah. Kalau kita sebenarnya sebelum kita start semester, kita dah kena launch a survey form to check our students' connectivity and also device. Okay, before we design and plan how we're going to deliver our subject and how we're going to conduct our assessment and what type of assessment is suitable depending on the data that we collected from the survey lah sebenarnya. Tetapi saya tak pasti sama ada di UTM adakah diagnostik ataupun survey sebelum start semester ni wajib ke tidak. Di UMP kita tak wajib kan, tetapi kita advise and kita highly recommend for lecturers to conduct survey to find out students punya connectivity and also device before they design dia punya subject for that particular semester. So in here, if we look at the reason why we need to go for flexible assessment is because currently because of the pandemic, which kita tahu kan, in Spanish flu pada tahun 1919 kan, 1919 if I'm not mistaken. It lasts for 10 years kalau tak silap saya, sampai 1929. Betul ke? Kalau ada siapa-siapa boleh betulkan saya. It lasted, dia sama macam apa yang kita alami sekarang. Face mask is wajib and all that. Sampai dah ada Black Death dekat Spain. So it lasted for 10 years. So kalau kita tengok what we are experiencing now in the current pandemic is almost like similar to the Spanish flu. So waktu itu tak ada teknologi, tapi sekarang ada teknologi. So with that technology, I think we need to check on connectivity. So we can see now if our assessment is rigid, prescribed, and we do not actually allow students to do it at their own, bukanlah leisure time Kenapa saya tak kata leisure time? Saya just nak share apa yang berlaku kat saya lah baru-baru ni. Saya tengok memang bila saya check continuous assessment dalam subjek saya, ada 3 ataupun 4 students yang memang tak hantar continuous assessment ni. Markah dah lah banyak, dia tak hantar. Saya pun tak tahu, ada yang tak hantar tu sebab dia ada masalah communication dengan group. Again, saya punya assessment tu prescribed, maknanya student kena hantar so and so time. Ada yang students yang tak ada proper device, dia memang belajar hanya pakai phone saja. Okay. Ada juga student yang bila saya run, saya rasa you all share the same struggle jugalah kot dengan saya kan. Bila student nak sit for final exam, ramai juga yang sebenarnya relying on limited data plan. Sebab tu yang saya buat saya punya soalan tu authentic. Okay, dan saya tak pakai proctoring device, nada saya buat secara synchronous yang saya minta dia orang on yang punya data. Saya tak buat cara macam tu sebab bila saya buat survey, half of my class is actually having connectivity problem. Lepas tu, dalam masa yang sama, not only that, ada yang juga ada data, mungkin unlimited data tetapi tak dapat connection. So bila tak dapat connection, they have to go daripada rumah dia 1 jam nak pergi ke highway just to sit for the exam. Macam Viviana lah. Okay, lebih kurang. Pergi sit dekat highway untuk buat exam. So saya boleh dengar highway punya bising tu, dan saya boleh dengar ada student dekat kandang kambing pun saya ada dengar. Ada student yang saya dengar background belakang dia lah angin laut, saya ada dengar. Kenapa saya dengar semua tu? Sebab bila saya create authentic assessment, apa yang saya buat ialah saya suruh student bukan jawab secara menulis. Sebab saya tahu kalau diorang tulis, diorang akan tiru dia klik. Saya suruh dia record dia punya jawapan, voice recording, untuk dia justify kenapa dia dapat jawapan tu. So masa voice recording ni lah saya dengar macam-macam bunyi tu. Saya dengar bunyi dia dengan kawan-kawan, ada yang saya dengar dia saya kata dia dekat ladang, ada yang saya dengar dekat tepi pantai. And so we can see how student actually struggle. So if saya itulah terharu jugalah bila UTM minta saya buat topik ni, flexible assessment ni, baru saya realise saya sendiri pun sebenarnya tidaklah begitu flexible. So thank you Yutem for making me realize how bad I am as a teacher. Not making my assessment flexible, tidak prihatin kepada pelajar-pelajar saya yang ada isu connectivity saja. Itu baru cerita pasal connectivity, belum lagi cerita pasal device. Nak cerita pasal device, pasal student kita yang terpaksa share tablet lah, share laptop lah, share segala hal lah. So we cannot make an assumption that all our students are like us, having good connectivity, having device to work remotely online, and ramai juga student kita termasuk diri kita pun sebenarnya tak adalah ada conducive room ataupun learning spaces untuk kita belajar online daripada pukul 8 pagi sampai pukul 5 petang. Okay? Not to mention, ada yang kita pun tahu kan, Majlis Perwakilan Pelajar dah beritahu dengan KPT, ada kes di mana pelajar juga disuruh oleh parents untuk keluar rumah. Maknanya parents dia halau dia just because daripada pagi sampai ke petang sampai ke malam duduk depan komputer belajar online. Macam anak-anak saya lah, pagi-pagi je tahu je saya dengar kat luar bilik dah start dah lecture. Malam pun tak turun makan, start dah lagi lecture. Lepas tu recently we had complaint by students punya perwakilan yang pensyarah suka sangat tukar dia punya slot untuk mengajar dan suka buat waktu weekend dan juga buat waktu malam. That is also another thing. So we can see the issue on why is it flexible assessment and flexible education come about. Not to mention many of our students also having to work, having to look after their parents, having to do part-time job, helping their family, sama ada dekat kampung and all that. Sama ada dia punya family income dah terjejas because of COVID, ataupun memang student kita adalah B40 ataupun M40 yang dah jatuh kepada B40 because of the pandemic. Not to mention there are also baru ni dekat UMP, saya rasa dekat universiti lain pun sama, ramai je student yang bawa Grab. Dan not only yang bawa Grab, they are already fall into this. Jadi dia tak boleh sit for exam. Student saya bila saya buat final exam, dia tanya dengan saya, doktor, saya tak ada laptop ni sebab saya tengah kerja. Boleh tak saya jawab tak pakai kertas graf? Saya kata, jawablah apa pun. Selagi you boleh menunjukkan yang apa yang soalan tu nak, saya terimalah. So tadi tu, you can see So not only they are on all this, ramai juga yang innalillah pun ada. Ramai yang juga dah jatuh disable dan ramai juga yang cuti disebabkan they face accident. Ini sebab real cases yang saya cakap ni, sebab saya adalah ahli jawatankuasa kepada Majlis Peperiksaan Universiti. Jadi saya tahu cerita-cerita ni semua. Dalam masa yang sama kita ada juga pelajar yang memang depress sangat-sangat belajar online dan belajar secara remote sebab tak ada kawan keliling, tak boleh pergi kedai mama and all that. Jadi kita nak tengok macam mana we handle with attitude. So yes, thank you so much for bringing up the topic on flexible assessment. And as I mentioned, how flexible assessment do we want to go for from here? When we talk about from here, from what we are facing now. So tadi saya ada sebut kita ada 4 aspek yang kita boleh make it flexible. 4 aspek. Jadi takkanlah baru first time lah dalam hidup kita kan, sebab kita tak went through Spanish pandemic dulu tu. First time dalam hidup kita ni, kita have to face pandemic COVID-19, takkanlah kita nak buka 4 aspek. Tapi kalau siapa yang able nak buka 4 aspek, so be it. Tapi bagi orang macam saya rasa saya akan buat flexible assessment ni hanya dengan membuka satu aspek saja dulu, dan mungkin saya nak berjinak-jinak dengan in fact saya dah buat ni yang tema ni. Nanti saya akan tunjuk macam mana saya make it flexible dalam tema ni. saya buka dua ni dulu. Okay. So the full form, full blown ataupun full form of flexible assessment ni is when you open up, for example, all the 4 aspect yang negotiable between lecturers and also student. Tetapi apa yang non-negotiable is actually the learning outcome of the subject that has been what we call determined by the program owner. Yang itu kita tak boleh negotiate dengan student. Maknanya student kata, saya tak nak lah learning outcome ni, saya nak tunjuk yang saya faham subjek ni melalui ini. Tak boleh lah. Sebab whatever it says in the learning outcome, that need to be assessed. But how it will be assessed, assessment apa nak guna, bila, and in what environment that assessment will be conducted, that one is negotiable. And time when the assessment will be conducted, that is negotiable. So we need to be clear about what is negotiable and what is not negotiable. So in order for us to be able to perform ataupun to practice flexible assessment ni, kita kenalah satu, mahir ataupun sangat familiar, dah pernah practice kau-kau alternative assessment. Dan kita mestilah orang yang juga scholar ataupun mahir yang practice dengan sangat baik kita punya standardized assessment. Standardized assessment tu apa? Yang final exam tadi tu. Sebab flexible assessment ni, sebab dia flexible in nature, sebab student boleh pilih dia punya types of assessment. Jadi kalau pesyarah sendiri tak biasa dengan various types of assessment, be it dalam family alternative assessment ke ataupun dalam family standardized assessment ke, susahlah kita nak negotiate assessment methods yang student nak. Jadi kita sendiri kena mahir dengan pelbagai jenis assessment that we are talking about. Katalah student nak tunjukkan learning outcome number 1 tu through portfolio. Tapi kalau pesyarah tak pernah assess student melalui portfolio, so macam mana nak buat? Tentulah tak boleh buat kan? Tentu takkanlah kita lecturer kita nak cakap dengan student, saya tak pernah assess portfolio, saya tak tahu, jadi tak boleh lah. So it's not going to be fair to students in terms of flexibility and in terms of inclusiveness of the student. So suka tak suka, as I mentioned, kalau kita nak practice flexible assessment, kena mahir dalam pelbagai jenis alternative assessment dan kita juga kena mahir dalam standardized assessment. Jadi bila student negotiate, dia kata okay, untuk learning outcome number 1, saya nak sit for final exam, 2 soalan, saya nak sit for case based assessment. So kalau pesyarah biasa, so tak ada masalah lah kat situ untuk agree. So it's just a matter now to design the assessment kalau pesyarah bolehlah buat benda tu. So this is what that flexible assessment is all about. Okay. So with that, I would like to pause. Saya nak minta Dr. Hairul tolong naikkan satu link kepada Google Form ni.
Okay, baik.
Kita pause dulu kat sini. Dan kalau ada soalan, maybe boleh tanya while waiting for that.
Okay, terima kasih Doktor. So, right, saya ada di bawah ni, ada satu link given to me by Dr. Aisyah. Dan please click on that link. Ada satu soalan in Google Form. So, I would like, kalau boleh, all of you to kindly fill in this survey form. Dan I think it's almost 3:30 dan I think it's a good time for us maybe kita take a 10 minutes break, betul? Is it okay with you?
Sure.
Maybe after nak tengok result afterwards ke ataupun nak tengok result sekarang tu macam mana? Kita bagi masa sikit. Sekarang ni I think it's good time.
Saya buka je.
Okay. So sekarang maybe kalau anybody kalau di sini mau soalan intermittent ni, tanya doktor berkenaan apa yang kita dah cover so far. So anybody yang kat sini nak tanya soalan boleh unmute your mic and please introduce yourself And feel free to speak with Dr. Aisyah. Okay, rasa siapa ingin bertanya? So, kita ada lebih kurang sekarang dah 98 ya doktor, kita punya partisipan kita. Harap-harap semuanya mendengar.
Lepas ni kita nak pergi the nitty-gritty on how do we do flexible assessment in alternative assessment. Lepas ni kita nak tengok cara macam mana nak buat pula. Tadi tu baru konsep-konsep je. Maybe dekat chat kalau ada soalan, I will be here while you take your coffee or grab your tea ataupun apa-apa. So kalau ada soalan,
doktor mungkin saya nak tanya satu lah.
Ya.
Aisyah, kalau katakan in UMP or maybe in other place yang maybe doktor pernah observe practice, what is your thoughts on having a flexible for students, especially on final year, to choose their own topic for their final year project? Is that considered as a flexible assessment? Atau macam mana?
Yes, it is flexible assessment. Itulah saya kata sebenarnya flexible assessment ni something yang kita bukanlah sesuatu yang kita tak pernah buat ataupun yang kita tak buat, kita tak familiar. And in fact kalau kita tengok not only final year project, kalau kita tengok latihan industri latihan industri kan, latihan industri student kita tak bagi tahu pun student mesti cari company A. Semua orang mesti company A because kita punya disiplin ni lah ni. Student yang dapat company yang nampak macam tak ada kaitan langsung pun dengan disiplin tu. But does that mean that the student will not be able to perform and also able to demonstrate achievement of learning outcome untuk latihan industri? Sebab tu saya pernah bagi satu training about latihan industri lah tentang ni lah, tentang competency based, tentang latihan industri sebagai satu not only experiential learning tetapi alternative assessment. Kat situ saya cuba tekankan kita sepatutnya bukan menilai end product tu lah, dia punya report lah, dia punya presentation lah, tetapi sebenarnya apa yang kita patut nilai dan kita patut facilitate dan bantu dia ialah masa dia tengah buat LI tu. So bila saya discuss tentang assessing proses ni, ramai yang tak selesa lah. So sebenarnya saya tak kisah bila orang tak selesa. Kenapa saya kata saya tak kisah tentang orang tak selesa? Sebab kalau kita tengok tadi tu ZPD tu, kalau saya boleh share balik saya punya slide sekejap So kalau kita tengok konsep ZPD ni quite powerful lah dia punya konsep which can be applied to quite a lot of things actually. Saya buka balik ini. So apa yang dia froze kejap. Boleh nampak skrin saya ke tapi putih je?
Di tengah on the way. Mungkin setengah-setengah dah dapat. Doktor cuba try balik share your screen tadi.
Saya buka yang ni. Okay, ZPD ni kan kalau kita tengok.
Go ahead doktor.
Saya punya skrin dah jadi putih. Saya end show dulu.
At the same time kita pun ada bagi slides your lecture notes to all the participants, bagi link. So maybe all participants boleh juga refer kepada lecture notes yang kita bagi dekat link dalam website KAIS tu. At the same time. Okay,
dekat ZPD ni, kenapa saya kata saya tak kisahlah bila pensyarah macam tak selesa bila kita talk about let's assess process. Let's focus on learning focus ataupun assessing process rather than assessing end product. Bila kita diberitahu ataupun bila kita orang bagi kita satu idea baru, kita akan jadi tak selesa dan kita akan marah lah, kita akan buatlah apa yang yang kita nak buat lah out of kita punya ketidakselesaan. Kalau kita jadi pemimpin, bila orang marah-marah, orang react kepada idea-idea baru, kita jangan putus harap. So similarly with lecturers, kalau you nak buat alternative assessment, kalau you nak buat flexible assessment, if your students rate you tak berapa bagus ataupun panik ataupun rasa tak selesa, mula nak jangan putus harap. Kenapa saya kata jangan putus harap? That is a sign that kita punya audience ataupun kita punya students are actually expanding dia punya ZCD ni. Sebab dia dah ada dalam comfort zone dia. So bila kita bagi sesuatu yang baru, bila dia dapat information tu, dia dah start berfikir, dia dah start talk about it, communication dia dah start berlaku. Bila communication dia start berlaku, dia start improve dia punya communication. So bila dia expand dia punya circle ni, macam getah, bila kita tarik, kita expand, sebenarnya bila orang komplain, student tak selesa, student pening kepala, nak marah-marah, nak tanya sana sini tu semua, that is a sign that dia punya ZPD is now expanding. Dia punya ZCD tu, dia punya inner circle tu dah start expanding. So kita kena push lagi supaya dia expand. Kita kena push lagi supaya dia expand sampailah dia expand ke potential dia yang dia boleh pergi. So similarly, bila kita tengok kepada case yang LI tadi tu dan juga case final year exam, it's true to certain extent it is flexible in terms of the nature of assessment because kita allow student untuk pilih topik dia sendiri. Dan untuk LI, dia pilih company dia sendiri. Saya pernah dapat student yang memang company itu tak ada kena-mengena dengan engineering. Tetapi as a lecturer, sebenarnya kita boleh bantu pelajar untuk lihat apa yang company itu buat dalam engineering perspektif. So at the end of the day, it's all about how we lecturers helping student provide this, helping student to make use of whatever environment or condition that they are in to achieve the learning outcome of that particular course. So itu yang penting sebenarnya. Kalau dekat Canada, UBC, University, bukan UBC, Victoria University. For your information, Victoria University ni is one of the best university for TU2I lah. In fact, saya tahu TU2I punya good practice is actually from Victoria University in Canada. So bila saya engage dengan staff yang in charge TU2I di Canada, they don't call it TU2I lah. Dia ada term lain untuk tu. When they show dia punya assessment, saya memang sangat terkejut. Kenapa saya terkejut? Assessment dia embrace flexible assessment. Sekarang mula-mula saya tahu nama dia flexible assessment. Mula-mula saya tak tahu apa nama assessment ni. Tapi saya memang first time saya went through dia punya assessment method tu, saya macam wow, this is something that memang Malaysia tak pernah buat dan saya pun tak pernah buat. Apa berlaku ialah student bila dia untuk TU2I ni dia akan berada di industri kan. Dia akan ada at least setahun berada di industri. So bila student pergi ke industri dekat Victoria University ni dekat Canada, dia allow student dia untuk choose. Tak semestinya kalau student tu dalam engineering dia pergi engineering punya company. Tak semestinya. Dia boleh juga sebenarnya student tu pergi ke ministry, pergi ke community, pergi ke mana pun. So bila diorang pergi ke tempat-tempat yang bukan dalam so-called disiplin, saya tanya dengan pensyarah tu, macam mana you assess student bila student are not in that particular industry? So bila saya tengok dia punya assessment tu, they are still assessing the learning outcome. Kalau misalnya dia kena assess communication, dia still assess communication, tapi communication dalam konteks where the students are lah. Kalau student tu dengan community lah. Kalau student tu dengan law firm dengan law firm lah. Dari segi technical sama juga sebenarnya. So saya tengok dia punya understanding of flexible education and how they make the assessment inclusive tu memang hebat lah. Tu saya kata flexible assessment ni bukan something yang baharu. Mungkin baharu bagi saya lah and also bagi kita. Tetapi this has been done many years and by many people lah. So memang betul lah Yutan buat topik ni.
Alhamdulillah, baik. Terima kasih, Doktor. Okay, thank you very much for ni. Okay, kalau ada soalan lain, before kita take a break, sekarang masa sudah 3.35. So, is it okay if kita boleh take around like 5 to 10 minutes break, Doktor? Kita stop dulu untuk beri laluan kepada staff kita untuk nak ambil tea break ke boleh? Is it okay?
Okay, sure.
Okay, alright. So, terima kasih semua. Kita akan come back in about 5 to 10 minutes. So maybe Isham boleh playkan sikit video untuk stretching. Itu biasa tengah-tengah ni kita buat stretching sikit video lah Tasha. Untuk bagi sedap kita punya masa lah. Semua dah lenguh duduk atas kursi kan. Okay, stay tuned and we'll be right back insyaAllah.
Yep.
We often get asked which exercises are best to do at your desk. So I'm going to run you through a simple routine to do throughout your working day.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and welcome back. Sekarang sudah pukul 3.45. So, boleh kita resume kembali kita punya sesi. And before that, kita give you satu soalan questionnaire. Kalau ada satu soalan daripada mana-mana peserta ingin bertanya kepada Dr. Aisyah, silakan. I think there's another one question daripada Dr. Sazalin Shah dalam chat kita. Dia bertanya, on flexible assessment, how can we prove that the assessments conducted flexibly are at par with each other across time, venue, method, groups of students, etc. for the purpose of evidence in program accreditation as stated in MPA COPA standard?
Oh wow, that's a very good question. Ingat tak kita ada learning outcome? Dan untuk setiap learning outcome tu, basically kalau kita buat flexible assessment, student can negotiate what type of assessment that they would like to go through, right? Jadi macam mana kita nak tentukan yang student A dengan student B, walaupun student A dengan student B ambil different types of assessment, tetapi macam mana kita nak tahu dia same level? Macam mana kita nak tahu quality dia tu acceptable nanti? It's all going to be determined by the taxonomy of the learning outcome. Kalau misalnya for example learning outcome number 1 outcome number 1, taxonomy dia ialah C2, cognitive level 2. Meaning that although student A dia choose to sit for one test plus presentation, the lecturer must make sure that the test and presentation reach the level of C2. So similarly untuk student B, katalah student B dia ambil untuk learning outcome number 1 for C2, dia nak buat report dengan dia nak buat video, short video. So basically report dengan short video tu pun must fulfill C2. Sebab tu saya kata tadi, kalau nak buat flexible assessment ni, pensyarah mesti scholar. Bila kita kata scholar ni mahir lah. Mahir tahap bagus lah ni, tahap gaban ke whatever lah dalam assessment lah. Jadi dia kena pastikan apa yang kita maksudkan dengan tahap itu, taksonomi ni semua dah memang on the fingertips. Jadi bukanlah bila student A, student B, walaupun dia ambil types of assessment tu berbeza dan dia ambil pada waktu yang pun tak sama, tidak ada kawalan langsung dan standard dia berbeza-beza, tak. Sebenarnya tu yang saya kata tadi, what is non-negotiable is the learning outcome and the level of taxonomy of that learning outcome. So that's very important indeed. And normally alternative assessment ni kalau kat luar negara pun kita tak bagilah pada pelajar-pelajar lower years ataupun pelajar-pelajar baru. Unless pelajar-pelajar ni dah mature ataupun pelajar-pelajar yang higher years yang kita dah kenalkan dia dengan diverse assessment methods. Jadi dia dah tahu dah assessment methods ni macam ni, assessment method. Kalau dekat luar negara in fact student daripada sekolah lagi dah di train lah diverse assessment methods lah, and how to use rubrics, how to take charge of their own assessment and their learning. The self-directed tu memang highly rigorously being trained lah amongst the student. Okay. Tadi ada second question, Doktor?
Actually, Dr. Sazalin Shah dia tanya tadi is the second question, tapi dia terlupa nak letak the first question. But anyway, kalau Dr. Sazalin Shah want to ask again your first question, boleh silakan. Make sure that if you want to have a question, please send to everyone. Ya. Okay, Dr. Sazalin nak cakap ke? Go ahead, please.
Yes, please, Dr. Khairul. I am Dr.
Yes, go ahead.
Aisyah. Thank you very much for your nice talk. Ni idola saya ni, M Jalil ni.
Oh no.
Sorry, Dr. Khairul, because I'm using my mobile ni tadi. I was outside, but still hearing ni lah, Dr. Aisyah. Regarding yang flexible tadi, thank you Dr. Aisyah for the answer. Cuma my question was, sebagai fakulti kan, how do we manage evidence tu? Meaning, let's say lah, we have a group of lecturers yang ajar senior students, they want to do flexible, okay, fine. But what do we require the lecturers to produce as evidence? So from what you answered just now, I presume katalah dia buat assignment kan, assignment 20%. So that assignment 20% tu flexible, meaning dia need to produce JPU lah kan, JPU or JSU lah, all the mapping apa semua kan for that particular assignment as an evidence to show that semua ni setara and map to the learning outcome. Betul ke Dr. Aisha?
Itu dari segi alignment. Actually-nya itulah nak kata, I'm not trying to impose anything here, cuma saya pun kena careful untuk jawab ni. JSU ni namanya pun jadual sukatan ujian. Dia tak test specification table. Kita kata test tu maknanya exam. Jadi exam tu tadi, kalau kita faham daripada first part of the discussion kita tadi, first session tadi tu, exam ni actually is one type of assessment yang jatuh dalam kelompok standardized. Jadi bila kita kata kita nak collect evidence tadi tu, sebenarnya JSU ni dia bukanlah the only tools untuk menunjukkan bahawa assessment tu valid. Ini for the sake of quality assurance, contohnya valid. Bila kita kata valid ni maknanya assessment tu align dengan outcome. Kalau misalnya kita menggunakan examination, in order for us to show alignment of our questions kepada learning outcome, memang kita akan guna GSU. Tetapi kalau kita gunakan assessment methods yang lain, contohnya bila kita guna alternative assessment, kita tak pakai GSU sebenarnya. Sebab U tu kan stands for ujian. Sebab alternative assessment dia sebenarnya kita buat pentaksiran sebenarnya. Jadi bila kita kata pentaksiran tu, kita normally kita tak pakai GSU lah. Kita just make sure masa kita, sekejap lagi saya akan tunjuk macam mana kita nak check alignment bila kita buat alternative assessment. Shall we explore that sekejap lagi Dr. Sazali? I will address to that question with the example. Boleh? Okay. So sepatutnya daripada kalau kita carefully design kita punya document masa kita buat alternative assessment nanti, kita tak perlu isi GSU sebab daripada dokumen kita tu kita dah boleh nampak alignment di situ. Dan kalau misalnya MQA nak check whether assessment tu valid ke tidak, ya, bila digunakan dalam flexible assessment, dia boleh check pada assessment instruction tu lah. Pada assessment instruction tu katalah dia pakai case based, katalah student nak pakai case. So instruction case tu kena align lah kepada learning outcome dan dia punya pemarkahan pun kena align kepada learning outcome. Jadi kalau misalnya any assessor check nanti, daripada situ dia boleh terus je nampak yang instruction untuk task yang diberi kepada pelajar tu is actually memang address learning outcome tu, dan apa yang student tunjuk tu pun telah mencapai learning outcome. So tak ada isu, tak ada keperluan GSU bagi alternative assessment sebenarnya. So alternative GSU ni selalunya memang untuk exam, peperiksaan. So peperiksaan tu termasuklah ujian, test yang kita buat midterm tu. Okay.
My question was, Dr. Khairul, was on the WBL, authentic alternative assessment for the WBL tu lah. So maybe nanti Dr. Aisyah boleh touch upon on that later kot. Okay.
Itulah yang WBL tu yang saya kata tu, kalau nak tengok contoh yang terbaik macam mana it is done, dia buat secara fleksibel yang kemas lah. Memang Victoria University is a main model lah throughout the world pun. Memang diorang is internationally, diorang memang internationally accredited WBL and also work-based learning punya institution tu kat situ. Kalau nak tengok assessment dia semua, saya dah tengok lah. So memang dia embrace betul. Okay. So saya nak share screen sekejap. Yang saya nak share ialah kita punya ni dulu. Kita punya
Doktor, ada satu soalan last break kejap aja.
Sure.
Daripada Dr. Azma Putra, dia tanya, is this alternative assessment practical for number of students, let's say more than 60 students? Jadi isu tak kat situ.
At the end of the day, it depends on how we design it. Kalau misalnya kita ada student yang ramai, kita boleh kurangkan workload kita tersyarah. Masa kita design assessment, apa jenis pula tak kisahlah, flexible ke, standardized ke, ataupun alternative assessment. There are a few things that we need to consider lah. Satu ialah student workload, satu ialah lecturers workload, lepas tu satu lagi whether you would like it to be technology assisted ke tidak. So kalau student you ramai, you can still do it. You can do it in a group. So maybe kalau you nak tanda less report, buatlah group tu bigger. Dan kalau you rasa penat nak bagi feedback, you boleh buat peer feedback. Tetapi you kena design lah borang untuk peer feedback tu ataupun mekanisme untuk peer feedback supaya efektif tu dengan sangat kemas lah. So there are means and ways to do it lah walaupun bigger. Dan also kita kena ingat bila kita buat assessment, kita ni lecturer selalu ingat assessment ni is all done by lecturers. Tak. Yeah. Assessment, kalau you tengok micro credential sekarang ni kan, assessment can also be done by peers, can be done by public, can be done by community, can be done by professionals. So these are the premise yang kita jarang nak pakai. Kita selalu ingat assessment tu mesti by lecturers. No. That is why kita rasa workload kita terlampau besar lah. Tetapi in order for us to explore that assessment can be shared with and done by other parties rather than lecturers themselves, kita kena ada collaboration dululah dengan all these various stakeholders kita ni. Sebab dia orang pun sama naik tak tahu nak buat assessment. Sebab assessment, one thing about assessment assessment ni is so technical such that kita tak boleh and it is a gatekeeper to quality. So kita tak boleh, siapa pun boleh buat assessment. Tak sebenarnya. Kalau kita research lah on assessment, macam saya, bila saya dah research on assessment for many years, dia lagi mendekatkan saya dengan pencipta kita lah, dengan Allah. Sebab sebenarnya yang boleh assess seadil-adilnya ialah Allah lah. Kan, Allah is the mighty judge kan. So bila manusia cuba melakukan evaluation, flexible assessment ke ataupun evaluation yang we are talking about, kita ni cuba buat sesuatu yang sebenarnya apa yang Allah is the best lah sebenarnya. So obviously apa yang kita buat ni sangat inferior in quality, in practice. Tetapi this is where kita kena keep improving ourselves lah. Sebab tu saya tak pernah jemu jelak lah untuk research on assessment ni, sebab memang banyak sangat benda yang kesilapan yang kita buat. So going back to that question again, tadi question dia apa tadi sampai dah lupa dah saya. Was Dr. Khairul?
Number of students.
Number of
alternative assessment.
Boleh sebenarnya. Boleh.
Okay, boleh ya, tak masalah.
Boleh. Sebenarnya boleh.
Silakan.
Kita cari. Okay, so saya just nak respon sikit kepada kita punya survey tadi. So in the survey, this is formative assessment. So I need to introduce you to another term tentang assessment ni. Formative assessment. Bila kita kata formative assessment ni, kita bagilah soalan, kita bagilah activity. It can be soalan, can be activities. That with that soalan or activities, we can sense whether our learners are there or they are not there. When we talk about there or not there tu in relation to learning outcome lah. Sebab first learning outcome untuk sesi ni is for all of us, including myself, to recognize the main features of alternative assessment and also flexible assessment. So basically soalan nombor 1 yang saya letak dekat sini, saya tanya test, quiz, midterm and final exam apa? Are these standardized exam, standardized assessment or exam? Majority say yes, so this is correct. Test, quiz, midterm, final exam, sebenarnya dia bukan alternative assessment. Sebab alternative assessment tadi dia punya main feature dia authentic, okay? Dia real cases ataupun real world of work. Normally dia HOTS. So bila kita kata real cases, HOTS and all that, bila kita kata high level thinking ni, bila kita kata thinking, we have to remember thinking takes time. So bila kita minta student buat satu soalan dalam 30 minit waktu exam, sebenarnya tak ada masa berfikir pun sebenarnya. Waktu tu masa untuk regurgitate saja. Keluarkan apa yang ingat ataupun keluarkan apa yang kita dah belajar je sebenarnya. So exam to certain extent tak boleh sangatlah nak measure thinking sebenarnya. Sebab tu di UM saya pernah dengar lah dulu-dulu, bukan sekarang lah, pernah dia buat exam, final exam by Faculty of Education. Final exam dia last for 2-3 days. Kami dengar apa terkejut sebenarnya. That is because the question in the final exam is high hot. Maknanya dia perlu research, dia perlu cari bahan, perlu dulu pula buka di internet and all that, kena pergi library. So exam ni ialah 2-3 hari. So kalau kita tengok kalau nature assessment tu 2-3 hari kena cari bahan, kena bincang, kena ini, kena itu, kena fikir, kena reflect. It need to be done over a period of time, and that is actually alternative assessment rather than examination. Adakah test, quiz, midterm and final exam ni flexible assessment? The answer is, walaupun dua orang je yang jawab kata ya, the answer to certain extent ya. Sebab bila kita kata flexible assessment, ada student yang kata saya nak buat test. So it is actually a subset. Test, quiz, midterm and final can be a subset to flexible assessment. Okay, so that is the beauty about education. Education ni kalau kita jawab, tak semestinya jawapan kita tu semua salah tau. It all depends. Professor Felder selalu cakapnya tu. Kalau education, jawapan you tak semestinya salah. It's all depends. Okay, so let's look at question number 2. Alternative assessment is different ke, subset ke, ataupun similar to flexible assessment? Obviously, alternative assessment, okay, dia ada similarity dengan flexible assessment. Okay, so siapa yang jawab similar tu betul lah juga. Yang paling tepat ialah it is a subset of flexible assessment. Sebab flexible assessment consists of the first aspect tadi consists of various modes and consists of various types. Jadi bila kita kata modes and types ni, alternative assessment ni dia ada banyak jenis. Tadi kita tengok dah senarai tu. Jadi dia adalah subset kepada flexible assessment. Adakah alternative assessment different from flexible assessment? To certain extent, yes, it is different. So answer ni ada yes or no, ada pelbagai. So kita tengok alternative assessment main feature. Yang ini kalau kita tengok authentic, correct. Real cases, correct. Task based, performance based, correct. So mainly ramai yang dapat betul lah ni. Same instruction to all student. Alternative assessment, kita bagi sama, instruction yang sama ke kepada semua student? Yang 4 orang jawab ni? Yang lain disagree, yang 4 orang kata yes. To certain extent yes, sebab you bagi instruction yang sama. Tetapi dalam instruction tu, sekejap lagi kita tengok dalam sesi yang kedua ni, macam mana dalam instruction yang sama, tetapi kita memberi flexibility kepada pelajar untuk buat benda yang pelbagai. Okay. Tu yang saya kata, kita pilih satu tema, contohnya macam tadi, tema dia ialah bridge. Semua student kena, kita bagi instruction untuk semua student look at a theme of a bridge. However, which angle about the bridge that student decide to do in that particular project will be of student's choice. So maknanya instruction dia sama, tetapi dalam tu ada choice dan role yang berbeza. So jawapan yang 4 orang ni kalau ditafsirkan begitu betul. Okay. Alternative assessment main feature, adakah dia fokus kepada end product? Alternative assessment sebenarnya memang kita akan bagi markah kepada end product, tetapi sepatutnya markah end product itu bukanlah markah keseluruhan bagi alternative assessment itu. Kita kena juga bagi markah proses. Bila kita kata markah proses, contohnya kalau kita nak bagi markah communication, let's say dalam projek tu learning outcome kita ialah student should be able to discuss, tetapi kita punya PO yang kita kena address ialah communication skill. So maknanya ada dua benda yang kita kena measure kat situ. Jadi student should be able to discuss tu, you bagi markah kepada presentation dekat hujung project tu. Tetapi student punya communication tu, maybe what you need to do is you need to actually give marks based on student punya progress sheets contohnya, ataupun student punya logbook, ataupun meeting records, ataupun narrative of meeting records. So that is what we call assessing process. So ada dua perkara dekat situ. So jawapan kat sini ialah yes, alternative assessment ni memang kita main feature. Jadi kita tak assess end product, walau bagaimanapun end product tu masih lagi kita bagi markah, tetapi bukanlah full marks kepada alternative assessment tu. It's only contribute to certain percentage. Okay, let's look at flexible assessment. Flexible assessment ni betul. Nombor satu ni consists of various modes and types of assessment. Yang ni kita dah bincang tadi. Is it a task-based ataupun performance-based? Jawapannya ialah yes, tapi tak semestinya all. Kalau misalnya student tu combine alternative assessment dengan standardized tadi tu, maknanya bukan semua flexible assessment component tu adalah task-based. It can also be cognitive or exam-oriented based. Yeah. Can it be can be done at any time? Saya rasa semua orang dapat yang ni betul. Part ni semua orang tak berapa dapat ni. Is it inclusive? Flexible assessment is inclusive. Yang itu ramai yang tak dapat tepat yang tu. Bila kita kata inclusive, memang purpose in order to make assessment inclusive ni lah flexible assessment ni terbit sebenarnya. So kalau tak disebabkan oleh inclusivity yang kita kena address. Bila kita kata inclusivity ni meaning that nobody left behind. Maknanya tak kira lah apa keadaan pelajar kita, sepatutnya kita bantu dia. Jadi flexible assessment ni lah means untuk kita address inclusivity in higher education. So flexible assessment is inclusive in nature. Saya sebenarnya support lah flexible assessment ni sebab saya sendiri, contohnya anak saya yang nombor 3, yang last lah Bonsu, dia suffer from chronic eczema masa dia kecil-kecil. Sekarang pun sebenarnya masih lah, tapi now dia boleh manage sendiri. Bila kita kata chronic eczema ni sampai kuku jari, kuku kaki semua tercabut. So bayangkanlah kalau kuku jari, kuku kaki semua tercabut. Lepas tu asyik makan antihistamin yang mengantuk, macam mana dia nak pergi sekolah belajar. So most of the time kadang-kadang saya have to keep her at home. Jadi bila dia tak datang sekolah, dia tertinggal. Jadi bila tidak ada inclusive practice dalam education, maknanya kalau anak kita tak pergi sekolah, dia tak boleh sit for exam, dia miss dia punya lesson, so maknanya pelajar kita akan left behind. So inclusivity is very important. So kalau kita buat standardized assessment, semua orang kena pergi SPM. Bayangkan macam hari tu SPM tu budak COVID. So kalau assessment kita tak fleksibel, dia pula masa tu COVID, that's it. Tak boleh dah lah. So tahun tu dia terlepas. So actually flexible assessment ni lah is a kita panggil is a way out daripada masalah yang kita hadapi. Adakah flexible assessment ni personalized and authentic? Jawapannya ya. So this is another part yang maybe kita missed, tak dapat message-nya. Flexible assessment ni personalized and authentic. Personalized meaning that student sendiri yang pilih apa jenis assessment yang dia nak go through for a particular learning outcome. Sebab tu student A dengan student B, assessment dia maybe sama, maybe tak sama. Sebab student tu sendiri pilih, is personalized. Not only assessment methods, as I mentioned, the second aspect of flexible assessment tadi tu ialah dari segi time. So student A dengan student B, dia akan duduk dia punya assessment pada waktu yang berbeza, pada environment yang berbeza. So dia sangat personalized. So kalau student yang contohnya berada di Sabah Sarawak yang remote, ni yang remote teruk lah ni, yang remote teruk. Jadi mungkin dia memang tak boleh nak buat digital exam, dia tak boleh nak buat online. So kalau flexible assessment ni sepatutnya student boleh hantar secara post. So that is also part of flexible assessment, dia boleh hantar secara post, dia sendiri tentukan macam mana dia nak seek ataupun nak tunjukkan yang learning outcome tu achieve and it's authentic lah. So kalau misalnya dekat tempat dia tu tak ada benda-benda yang canggih-canggih, yang electricity, kita tak boleh lah bagi dia projek yang require dia menggunakan apa-apa alat yang kita expect ada dekat dia punya kampung yang sangat remote tu. So flexible assessment ni memang sangat powerful lah sebenarnya untuk especially kita lah dekat Malaysia. So kalau kita tengok dekat sini, last question ni sebenarnya saya nak guna data ni kemudian. I'm using these assessment methods in my course. Ada yang kata guna alternative assessment, ada yang guna test quiz, tapi kita tengok masih lagi banyak yang jenis-jenis yang biasa lah, yang standardized kan, yang stereotype. Okay, let's now stop that and let's share the second part. Tadi bila kita tengok kepada feedback, boleh nampak slide saya? Bila kita tengok kepada feedback, ada request for me to actually show examples how it is done. So for your information, kita baru selesai first part. So now second part ni memang barulah kita nak tengok kepada example how can we perform flexible assessment. Tetapi saya nak tunjuk macam mana kita nak buat flexible assessment through alternative assessment. So saya nak kena careful sikit sebab saya tak nak pergi terus ambil 4 aspek nanti semua orang pening. Dan saya rasa ini pun introductory kepada flexible assessment. Jadi kita nak tengok macam mana kita nak buat alternative assessment yang fleksibel. Yang ada ciri-ciri fleksibel supaya kita address isu flexibility, kita address keperluan inclusivity of our student tadi tu. Okay, so let's have a look at how we do it. So first of all, saya rasa sangat penting untuk kita recognize lah kat mana kita nak letak kita punya alternative assessment dalam kita punya kursus. Contohnya, ni kursus saya. Saya ada 40%
Doktor masih lagi belum share, sorry.
Saya belum share.
Dah share ke? Belum, sekarang saya nampak
dah
yang
share. Saya dah share
boleh try sekali lagi?
tapi dia tak pergi sorry tu. Sekejap saya share balik.
Mungkin boleh try share balik tadi.
Saya share. Boleh nampak ni?
Okey, boleh nampak. Ya.
Share content. Okay, so kalau kita tadi yang saya discuss tadi tu, so far kita dah pergi kepada outcome of the webinar yang nombor 1. So now we are ready to move on to second outcome. Sekarang ni lah baru kita nak tengok macam mana nak buat dan examples. So now, disebabkan saya nak cuba demonstrate flexibility dalam alternative assessment, let's first focus on alternative assessment dulu sebelum kita bercakap tentang flexibility. Jadi saya just nak demonstrate sikit kat mana letaknya alternative assessment ni. So kalau kita tengok in a normal way of we all experience, dalam satu kursus dia ada komponen of final exam. Macam kami ditetapkan 40%, saya rasa you all pun lebih kurang lah macam tu. Jadi yang lagi 60% ni sebenarnya kita adalah digalakkan.
Doktor, sorry minta maaf. Kami sekarang nampak view your folder. Kami nampak you punya Windows Explorer saja. Doktor plan to share je PowerPoint ni. Sebab kami tak nampak lagi.
Saya dah share PowerPoint tapi dia tak pergi
Okay, maybe unshare balik semua and then share balik.
Saya dah unshare tadi. Okay, let me try again. Kenapa dia tak pick up? So saya cuba.
Maybe doktor boleh share screen instead of share PowerPoint. Mungkin boleh share screen. So whatever is in front of your screen, kami boleh nampak insyaAllah.
Sekejap Dia macam dia ada buka dua PowerPoint dekat saya ni. Dan saya pun tak pasti kenapa dia buka dua PowerPoint. Okay, let me try again. Saya share. Kalau saya cuba share yang ni.
Okay, kita nampak
Boleh ke?
PowerPoint slide. Yang ada nombor 2 tu, red. Betul
Yang ada nombor
Yang
2.
ada big red number 2. Ya, betul. That's what we are seeing now.
Tapi saya yang tak nampak tu.
Oh, gitu.
Saya nampak Webex saja.
Oh, okay.
Sekejap. Let me work out. Saya tak pasti kenapa dia tak boleh nampak skrin tu. Okay. Let me work out. Saya pilih skrin satu, saya share. So sekarang ni nampak apa
Sebentar. Okay, nampak yang ada Webex, your browser ni. Webex yang ada alternative flexible assessment. Webex punya page.
Okay, saya sekarang I can't even open up my PowerPoint.
Okay, cuba Dr. scroll ke bawah tu. Kami nampak ada 3 menu tu. PowerPoint tu nampak, tapi cuba select. Cuba Dr. select PowerPoint tu. Either one.
Saya select PowerPoint tu tapi dia tak keluar.
Okay.
Boleh tak saya cuba ya.
Boleh cuba tak unshare kan? Boleh juga.
Macam mana?
Maybe you boleh apa ni leave kejap. Leave this Webex.
Itulah saya pun intend to do that. Saya leave dulu.
Okay. Okay, to all participants, kita take a moment sekejap sementara Dr. Aisyah come back. Harap dapat bersabar sebentar. So for the time being, as a reminder, perhaps maybe semua participant boleh fill in kan borang survey yang kita letak di atas tadi. If you have anything, any comment or any thoughts on this course, or maybe you want to put some suggestion, maybe in the future, is it okay if you want to put macam continuation for advanced or intermediate flexible assessment ke? Please feel free untuk letak dalam komen ya.
Okay, I'm in. Saya cuba share sekali lagi.
Okay, baik Doktor.
Okay. Boleh nampak Boleh nampak ke PowerPoint saya?
Belum keluar lagi Doktor.
Belum keluar lagi. Saya dah naikkan dah.
Doktor share. Okay.
Saya cuba sekali lagi. Baru keluar.
Dia sekarang ni baru nampak putih. Tengah-tengah in progress.
Okay, nampak tak PowerPoint saya?
Okay. Nampak session outcome, betul You're sharing that.
Session outcome, yes, correct.
Ya, betul. Okay. Right.
Saya rasa mungkin ada lagging lah. Okay.
Ya, betul.
So now we are ready to have a look at dia punya actual how. So sekarang ni kita nak tengok alternative assessment dulu. And as I mentioned, in a course selalunya kita akan ada final exam punya component which is 40%, and then kita ada another 60%. And what do we do with that 60%? So dalam 60% ni sebenarnya kalau macam Unimap kita bincang pagi tadi, Unimap sebenarnya minta pensyarah dia even for final exam pun tukar kepada alternative assessment. Tapi apa yang berlaku ialah pensyarah-pensyarah bila dia tukar final exam kepada alternative assessment, dia pergi buat again, dia buat test lagi yang kecil-kecil, lepas tu dia tabur dekat sini. So Unimap tegur lah pensyarah, dia kata that is not alternative assessment. Betul lah, sebab test as I mentioned, please remember test, midterm semua-semua tu adalah examination type, they are not alternative assessment. So similarly dalam example ini, kalau kita tengok final exam dengan midterm ni adalah exam punya assessment type. Jadi saya ada dua dekat sini yang dalam subjek saya ni, sebab saya ambil subjek ni daripada pensyarah yang dahulu, ada dua assignment dekat situ, assignment 1 and also assignment 2. Apa yang pensyarah nak bagi dalam assignment ni terpulang kepada pensyarah tu as long as it address the learning outcome. So dalam assignment 1, assignment 2 ni lah sebenarnya yang saya boleh buat saya punya alternative assessment. Jadi apa jenis alternative assessment yang saya boleh buat sebenarnya dalam dua assignment ni. So yang saya nak share dekat sini ialah untuk alternative assessment, kita kena design assessment tu yang authentic in nature, dan satu lagi perkara dalam alternative assessment and flexible assessment yang paling penting untuk kita practice ialah not only it is authentic, we must also practice formative assessment. Jadi saya nak demonstrate that too in this particular session. Kita harap kita sempat lah. Saya ada video yang saya nak main dekat sini sekejap. Harap boleh nampak. This is an alternative assessment. Let's watch. This is a project, a bridge project. The subject is the place. Itu ada test Test tu sebenarnya diambil oleh pelajar. So juga kita letak test dalam projek tu, dan siapa yang ready they do. Dan kalau kita tengok kat situ, nampak tak? Choose your assignment. It can be bridge design, it can be bridge construction, so that's where flexibility is being embedded in this alternative assessment. So project ni adalah alternative assessment, so flexibility is embedded in this alternative assessment by giving how they would like to do their project. Ada dia nak buat bridge construction ke, bridge design, what other choice yang cikgu tu lah ataupun pensyarah tu bagi pada pelajar. So you can see now there are students in alternative assessment. We still give we still show students how to do it, apart from testing how students actually understand how to do the project. The inclusivity tadi tu, kalau kita tengok bila student ni buat projek, dia bukan saja buat projek tu dengan dia punya cikgu. Dia buat projek ni sekali dengan father dia. Dia melibatkan ayah dia melibatkan orang luar, dia melibatkan cikgu. So dia punya feedback dia punya pembelajaran tu bila itulah luar negara kat pasal inclusivity. If you get the chance to experience it, is really fantastic. Sebab saya sendiri masa saya dekat Manchester, bila anak saya dapat homework, the homework yang anak saya buat tu inclusive in nature, macam mana cikgu-cikgu dia really embrace inclusive practice is such that dia buat assessment tu ataupun bagi projek pada anak saya such that anak saya tak boleh buat tanpa bantuan parents, tanpa bantuan cikgu. Jadi automatically saya as a mother, saya belajar tentang apa yang anak saya tu kena siapkan. So bayangkan anak saya ada one case tu dia kena buat Shakespeare. Saya orang engineering, mana saya tahu pasal Shakespeare. Disebabkan anak saya kena buat projek tu, suka tak suka saya pun kena belajar Shakespeare. So similarly, if you look at this example, see how the parents get involved in this project on the students having to complete on the bridge construction dalam ni. So you can see there's a quiz there from time to time. So bila student tu dah siap quiz dia, barulah dia boleh pergi to the next level. So it's so personalized, barulah dia boleh chat dengan practicing engineers out there. So this is where they get input on dia punya project lah daripada real engineer dekat luar sana. And with that feedback, you can see the group is actually improving their work. See how the student responds to the feedback. So this is formative assessment. Maknanya engineer luar tu tak bagi dia markah, cuma bagi dia balas on how to improve. So the student respond by making improvement to their first concept or first attempt. So the whole project saya rasa menggunakan framework CDIO, conceptualize, design, implement and operate. And eventually they test. So final baru ada test. This is the standardized test, final. So okay, so that is one video yang kalau kita dissect, kita tengok dekat situ macam mana flexibility is embedded in a typical alternative assessment lah. Dan kalau kita tengok alternative assessment tu, sepanjang-panjang projek tadi tu, student will sit for various types of assessment. Dia ada test, lepas tu dia ada quiz, lepas tu dalam masa yang sama dia juga sebenarnya get support and also feedback not only by the teacher but it's also by the parents and also by the practicing engineers, and eventually they set the yang hujung sekali tu kita tengok tadi, they sit for standardized assessment di mana dia punya product itu, the end product tu is being tested by the same means lah untuk semua group. So that is I think is quite a clear example to us on how we embed flexibility dalam kita punya alternative assessment. So now I would like to share how do we plan nak buat something like that. Okay, it is not quite straightforward. However, I think I was lucky last year, March masa pandemic PKP 1.0, buku ni keluar. This book is about how do we design authentic performance task project. Sebenarnya buku ni daripada author yang 3 orang ni are meant for teachers yang dekat sekolah bila cikgu-cikgu dekat sekolah buat projek kecil-kecil untuk student diorang, macam mana diorang nak design projek untuk student dia all. But I found you can go through the webinar. I don't think you need to buy the book because the webinar is quite good in itself and allow you to start. So bila saya go through this webinar, saya nampak dia introduce dalam buku ni dia introduce 12 design variables. So these are the 12 design variables. Kalau kita nak design alternative assessment ataupun kita nak design project untuk student kita. So what are the 12 variables? One is a time frame, and you can see there all the 12. Integration of subject, cognitive demand rigor, level of inquiry, degree of authenticity, audience for student products, performance mode, direction, student choice, access to resources, degree of scaffolding, evaluation of student products and performance. Disebabkan masa kita limited, kita bukannya buat bengkel one whole day. Jadi saya akan demonstrate macam mana nak guna several of these variables untuk kita design project ataupun alternative assessment untuk subjek kita. Dan macam mana pula dalam penggunaan dalam penggunaan several of these variables kita akan address flexibility issues tadi tu. So saya akan cuba embed dan tackle dua-dua ni and demonstrate to you how to do it. Okay. So first of all, let's look at the first design variable that is a time frame. Jadi bila kita nak buat alternative assessment tadi tu, either untuk assignment 1 atau assignment 2, the question is how long should you give time for students to complete that assignment? Ikut suka ke, ikut rasa-rasa ke, ikut macam mana? Okay. So actually untuk ini kita sebenarnya dah di train lah banyak-banyak kali dalam OBE. This is just a refresher course again. Kalau kita tengok, in order for us to determine how long should a particular assignment ataupun task itu kita nak bagi kat student, kita kena tengok berapa weightage sebenarnya yang that assignment ataupun task tu supposed to be given. Kalau 10% sahaja, contohnya ni subjek saya, is only 10% daripada 3 credit hours subjek. So bila kita kata 3 credit hours saja, we are talking about 120 hours student learning time. Jadi 10% daripada 120 hours is actually 12 hours of SLT. Okay. So bila kita cakap student learning time ni, maknanya 12 jam tu bukan 12 jam untuk buat just untuk buat assignment tu saja. Tetapi 12 jam tu, bila kita kata 12 jam untuk assignment ni, 12 jam tu adalah termasuk instruction dan juga assessment time yang diperlukan oleh pelajar untuk really buat report ke whatsoever ataupun buat preparation untuk assignment tu. Okay. So we have to be clear about this. I think dalam OBE benda ni dah diberitahu banyak-banyak kali lah. So untuk saya punya case assignment 1 ni sebab dia assignment yang nama pun assignment 1, jadi saya decided that assignment 1 ni saya nak bagi related to topik yang awal-awal dalam saya punya subjek. So topik yang awal dalam saya punya subjek, saya tengok adalah topik yang ada satu ni memang sangat independent lah. Topik nombor 1 ni pasal rock. Yang lain semua pasal soil. So I decided to give the assignment just based on this particular topic sahaja, dan bila saya tengok saya deliver topik tu dalam minggu pertama saja sebenarnya, 3 hours lecture, jadi SLT bagi minggu tu adalah 8 jam. Jadi ini bermakna student bila dia nak submit benda yang 10% ni, in order to make up the 12 hours, dia hanya ada 4 jam saja untuk dia tulis report, discuss dengan kawan-kawan dan buatlah cari bahan dalam internet dan sebagainya. So saya kena pastikan saya clear dan saya aware this is the time that the student have untuk complete that assignment of 10%. Jadi saya tak boleh, saya kena remind myself yang assignment ni tak boleh terlalu berat dan dia tak boleh terlalu lama. Therefore, in this case, I decided to actually create an assignment of yang duration dia 2 hingga maksimum pun 3 minggu sahaja. Saya bagi student arahan tu minggu kedua, jadi saya expect student submit minggu ke-4 ataupun minggu ke-5. So, this is how kalau kita tengok assignment 1, saya allocate student perlu ambil 4 jam untuk siapkan report dan sebagainya, dan dia sit for saya punya kelas 20 total SLT preparation and all that semua 8 jam. So all in all is 12 hours. So that reflect the 10% of assignment 1 untuk alternative assignment tu. So lepas tu saya pergi pula kepada variable number 2. So variable number 2 saya kena decide untuk 10% perlu ke saya create satu assignment yang student kena pakai pelbagai disiplin, ataupun saya just nak keep to subjek saya punya disiplin saja. Perlu ke saya nak suruh student tengok course punya aspek ke, nak tengok kepada entrepreneurial aspek ke, nak tengok kepada benda-benda lain. So I decided that because it's only 10% and it's only 2 to 3 weeks, I decided that that particular assignment only focus on satu subjek disiplin saja. Maknanya subjek saya je nak pakai bahan-bahan dalam subjek content yang daripada first topic saja. So that is how I narrow it down lah. Lepas tu kita kena tengok kepada cognitive demand and rigor. So ini berbalik tadi kepada soalan daripada Dr. Sazali dan juga another of our colleagues yang tanya tadi tu, macam mana kita nanti nak check alignment. Dari segi cognitive rigor, kalau kita tahu assignment 1 ni untuk learning outcome nombor 1, dan kita tahu learning outcome nombor 1 tu apa, macam saya tunjuk dekat sini. Learning outcome saya ialah student should be able to describe the formation of geomaterial. Dalam kes ni geomaterial yang saya nak dia describe ialah rock. Rock ni pula ada 3 jenis. So saya just nak suruh dia describe satu jenis saja sebab saya nak reducekan dia punya rigor dia punya demand dia pula tadi. So kalau kita tengok dekat situ, bila kita dah buat decision macam tu, cognitive rigor ni kalau kita tengok, kita kena berpegang kepada CO kita. So kalau CO kita memang C2 sebab describe kan. So maknanya kita kena expect sampai C2 sajalah. So we cannot be over design dia punya cognitive rigor dia punya depth of task yang kita nak bagi student tu sampai C6, C4 tak boleh. Kita suruh dia buat analisis, suruh buat pengiraan, suruh pula pakai software. So that is not fair. So kalau C2 je. So this is where constructive alignment, validity semua kita akan pass lah kalau kita go through variable number 3 dengan betul. Lepas tu kita tengok kepada level of inquiry. Kita nak suruh student explore saja ke, nak suruh student solve problem ke. So dalam kes saya disebabkan topik nombor 1, takkan nak suruh solve problem. So saya suruh student explore sajalah level of inquiry. Degree of authenticity. Degree of authenticity ni dia kata kita nak suruh student tengok dalam apa yang kita nak bagi student ni, kita nak bagi student issue ke, kita nak bagi student real world punya case ke. So dalam saya punya case, because engineering, saya nak student boleh connect subjek content dengan real application dekat luar sana. So saya nak student kalau dia dah belajar pasal rock, macam mana rock tu terhasil, apa ciri-ciri dia, saya nak dia boleh connect dengan, contohnya kalau dalam projek rock slope, macam mana rock formation tu dengan ciri-ciri rock tu menyumbang kepada rock slope punya work. Jadi itu harapan saya dalam assignment number 1. So bila saya go through variable number 5, saya decide to give students something of real world punya application. So that in itself will make sure that the project ataupun assignment yang kita bagi tu adalah authentic in nature. So saya nak stop sampai variable 5 dahulu, dan apa yang saya nak tunjuk dekat sini ialah this is the visual representation of benda-benda yang saya sebut tadi tu, daripada variable 1 sampai variable 5. Kalau kita tengok, saya tahu apa yang saya nak bagi kat student saya. Saya nak bagi kat student saya cuma satu topik saja daripada minggu pertama. Saya nak student saya pakai bahan-bahan daripada topik minggu pertama tu. Okay, dan saya nak limitkan dia punya rigor dengan dia punya depth gitu. Jadi saya just nak student ambil satu jenis aja rock untuk dia discuss. Dan apa yang once dia pilih satu jenis rock ni, saya nak suruh dia buat apa yang learning outcome tu nak ukur. Jadi saya nak suruh dia describe macam mana rock tu form, dan saya nak suruh dia describe apa karakteristik of rock yang terhasil kalau dia adalah jenis, contohnya kalau student tu pilih igneous, ataupun ada another student pilih sedimentary, dan so on and so on. So what's next? So itu maknanya dia hanya menggunakan subject content yang saya dah ajar dalam minggu pertama sajalah. Jadi in order to make meaning in what students learn, apa yang saya nak dekat sini lah, dan kalau tengok juga kepada learning outcome saya ni ada dua part. Satu, saya nak student boleh describe apa yang dia dah belajar dalam topik satu. Yang kedua, saya nak dia make meaning. Bila saya kata make meaning ni, saya nak dia boleh link kan the content tu dengan actual application, engineering application tu. Tu sebabnya bila saya pergi ke variable number 5, saya boleh arahkan student untuk this particular assignment, suruh student pilih satu real engineering application. Yang ini yang saya embed terus flexibility tadi tu. Maknanya saya bagi diorang satu tema. Tema adalah rock. Tapi you nampak tak flexibility dia dekat situ. Student boleh pilih apa jenis rock yang dia minat. Kalau dia minat igneous rock lah yang dia discuss. Kalau dia minat sedimentary lah yang dia discuss. Not only that, choice yang saya bagi kat student. Satu lagi flexibility yang saya bagi dekat student ni lah, dia juga boleh pilih apa real application yang dia minat. Contohnya ada student yang minat slope, ada student yang minat tunneling, ada student yang minat excavation, ada student yang minat foundation. So dia orang pilih je lah apa topik yang dia minat. Jadi so kalau kita tengok flexible assessment ni, dia akan encourage student dia akan membuatkan student be more motivated lah, sebab dia yang pilih. So dia yang take charge of dia punya learning, sebab dia yang pilih, dia yang minat. Therefore by right they should perform better lah. So once kita dah decide on all these parameters, now we can decide on apa end product yang kita nak suruh student submit. So untuk end product yang saya suruh student submit report. Tetapi obviously walaupun dia submit report dia ni report tu maknanya satu produk je lah, same product. So same product tu maknanya report. Apa yang dimaksudkan dengan variable 9 different focus ni? Fokus dia yang menyebabkan berbeza ialah dalam report ni, group A contohnya dia akan tulis tentang tunneling in igneous rock. Group B dia akan tulis report juga, same product, tetapi excavation in igneous rock. Jadi you can see there, bila saya ada 10 group, saya tak ada satu group pun yang sama fokusnya. Semua group fokus berbeza, tapi dia masih lagi menulis report tentang rock formation pada tema yang sama tadi tu. Same theme but different choices now. Okay, so that is roughly how I use the design variable to design one small assignment untuk student saya. So saya nak tanya setakat ni ada soalan ke tak? Dalam kalau kita tengok dalam design, sorry.
Okay, Dr. Saya tadi, just go ahead. Saya just nak tanya, kemudian kalau nak tanya apa-apa, please unmute your mic ataupun boleh type dekat chat bawah.
Sebab belah macam mana nak buat ni yang agak kompleks sikit lah. So kalau kita tengok, bila saya tengok lah dalam design framework ni, saya nampak yang paling susah student nak capai ialah part ni, linking subject content kepada real application. Jadi bila saya dah nampak student akan mengalami kesukaran dekat sini, tapi at the end of the day saya nak student capai learning outcome ni. Saya nak ukur melalui end product ni. Jadi macam mana saya nak buat? Saya kena plan macam mana saya nak bantu student untuk capai learning outcome tu. Kalau saya tahu dan saya dah anticipate inilah difficulties yang mereka akan lalui. Therefore, saya kena plan macam mana sekarang ni saya nak support student saya untuk dia capai learning outcome bagi assignment 1. Jadi saya decide pendekatan yang saya nak guna untuk assignment 1 ni ialah menggunakan case based. Jadi student akan tengok satu case, tunneling case ke slope ke cuma saya bantu student untuk kecilkan scope. Tak payah nak tengok macam mana nak design whatsoever, dia just nak tengok apa ciri-ciri structure tu dengan apa ciri-ciri rock pada structure tu. So itu je. Jadi kalau tengok kat sini macam mana saya support student, obviously saya support student macam dalam video tadi kita ada lecture. Okay, kita dah bagi dia PowerPoint, kita record pula some of the lecture, certain parts of the lecture. So we make it available online. So that is the first part on how we support our student. Second part on how do we support our student is that we have to make sure, sebab kita tahu susah untuk student nak link tadi subject content kepada rock contohnya tunneling, subject content kepada slope sebab dia belum belajar pun benda-benda ni. Sebab ni second year student. Jadi kita kena create a feedback session dekat situ. Feedback session ni is where we sit with our student, get them to ask apa benda yang dia tak reti dan dia tak faham, dan kalau dia tak tanya pun kita kena demonstrate macam mana dia nak link ini kepada ini. That is very important. We have to model it to student how they can link this part to this particular part over here. And that is all done through the feedback session. Satu lagi kaedah untuk kita support student so that student will actually achieve the learning outcome is by making sure that our assessment instruction untuk student buat assignment 1 tu perlulah clear dan perlulah ada step by step process on what they have to do. Ingat, alternative assessment ni is performance based ataupun task based. So bila kita kata performance ataupun task based, kita kena bagi tahu step 1 you kena buat apa, step 2 you kena buat apa, step 3 you kena buat apa. Supaya at the end of all the steps, student will complete the performance as in accordance to the learning outcome and will also actually get marks where they're supposed to get marks. Jadi kalau kita tengok dekat sini, these are basically the pedagogical approach that I use, but these are the teaching methods yang saya pilih untuk pastikan assignment 1 ni dibuat dengan jayanya lah. Sebab saya tahu untuk buat assignment 1 ni susah untuk diorang nak faham pasal batu ni, susah untuk diorang faham ni, susah pula nak link kan. Jadi saya tak suruh diorang buat secara individu, saya suruh diorang buat secara kumpulan. And for your information, saya tak measure teamwork dan group work dalam assignment ni sebab memang learning outcome 1 saya is actually linked to PLO number 3 dan PLO 3 tu tak ada mengena dengan communication skill ataupun teamwork. Jadi saya tak ukur benda-benda tu. Nevertheless, I give student feedback on how they should behave when they learn collaboratively sebab saya rasa kalau kita dah letak student dalam kumpulan, it is unfair for us not to help them to develop skills to work in a team. Jadi now what I would like to share with you macam mana kita nak tulis assessment instruction supaya assessment instruction ni menunjukkan validity of kita punya alternative assessment sebab tadi kita kata kita kena isi GSU kan. Tidak ada sebenarnya, in fact kita memang tak perlu pun buat GSU bagi alternative assessment. Jadi ini adalah format yang saya pakai, saya employ daripada training CDIO yang saya pergi di Singapore. CDIO ni sebenarnya sangat highly applicable to higher TVET punya institution lah macam kita lah MTUN. CDIO saya just nak share apa CDIO is all about. C stands for conceptualize. Conceptualize. D stands for design, I stand for implement, O for operate. So kalau kita tengok TVET sektor normally memang pakai CDIO framework lah, dia tak pakai the normal OBE framework, dia pakai CDIO framework. So kalau kita tengok dalam video tadi pun sebenarnya kalau you perasan dia pakai CDIO. Jadi dia allow student to conceptualize dulu, lepas tu student kena design, lepas tu student kena buat pula dia punya component of the bridge tu pakai 3D printer, implement, lepas tu barulah dia operate where they actually do the physical testing, letak weight pada apa yang they have design and also construct. So going back to the assessment instructions, kita perasan tak bila kita buat examination kita akan tulis exam question. Exam question kita tu kita akan semak lah. Exam question kita tu address learning outcome ke tak. Lepas tu kita kena declare pula alignment dia tu dalam JSU. Tapi bila kita buat kita punya alternative assessment dalam bentuk assignment yang case based ke project based ke problem based ke, kita jarang pay attention to soalan assignment kita. Sebenarnya soalan assignment kita tu perlu kita tulis dengan lebih berhati-hati in comparison to final exam. So kalau kita tengok sepatutnya ini pun perlu di-vet dan ini pun perlu disemak dengan teliti. So first of all, kalau exam question perlu address learning outcome, kita punya alternative assessment instruction pun mesti juga address learning outcome. So the first thing that we need to put there is actually a statement of learning outcome. Dan kita perlu letak dia punya level rigor dia tadi, depth. Lepas tu kita letaklah weightage dia berapa supaya nanti bila kita bagi tahu dengan student yang dia kena submit within 2 weeks, jadi 2 weeks tu berbaloi lah dengan 10% yang assignment ni perlukan. Dan kalau kita lihat kita ada sikit penerangan kepada pelajar apa sebab kita suruh student buat assignment ni. Okay. Lepas tu yang penting sebenarnya dekat sini. Title atas ni boleh tukar kalau kita tak suka task objective, scope, kita just boleh letak dekat sini lah kita boleh letak overview ke ataupun kita boleh letak title dekat sini what you will experience contohnya. So you can still change the topic, tetapi strukturnya saya sarankan lebih kurang begini. Yang saya nak tekankan dekat sini ialah scope of task. Scope of task ni kalau tak suka guna perkataan scope of task sebab dia tak melambangkan apa-apa kan. You boleh letak dekat situ what you have to do. Sebab ni arahan kepada pelajar kan. So kita gunalah ayat yang straightforward. What you will have to perform or how do you need to perform your task. So dekat sini apa perlu kita buat ialah sebab dalam framework saya tadi saya memang suruh student work in group sebab saya nak dia work collaboratively sebab 2 minggu je kalau nak buat seorang-seorang memang tak siap. Jadi saya suruh diorang bila saya kata work collaboratively maknanya dia kena work in group. So the first thing that I ask student to do is to form a team. Okay. So lepas dia form group apa yang saya suruh buat? Saya suruh diorang baca, buat discussion and all that. Lepas tu the next thing apa saya suruh diorang buat? So saya suruh diorang select one engineering work. So saya suruh diorang buat ni dululah. Buat yang ni dulu. Saya suruh diorang explore dan select satu engineering work. So itu arahan saya yang kedua. Sebab apa saya letak ini dalam arahan? Sebab ini ada dalam markah. Description of engineering application. Kat sini. So anything yang membawa kepada markah perlu disebut dalam arahan tugasan. Sebab kalau kita tak sebut dalam arahan tugasan, kalau pelajar skip ataupun tak buat yang menyebabkan dia tak dapat that component of marks, bukan student yang salah. Sebenarnya salah kita sebab kita tidak make the instruction clear and transparent. So we need to be very careful about that. Nanti saya bagi another dimension why this instruction have to be clear. Satu lagi kalau kita tengok dekat dalam contoh ni, point yang nombor 3 ni, arahan yang ketiga ni ialah apa yang student kena buat macam yang saya nak lah yang ni. So this is the first part of that learning outcome untuk dia describe tu. And this is where the instruction is. Ni untuk first part of the learning outcome tadi tu. So dia kena pilih salah satu daripada jenis rock. Dan kalau kita tengok arahan yang nombor 2 ni related to the second half of the learning outcome tu, which is this part, the engineering application tu. Okay, sebab tu benda tu kita include dalam kita punya soalan alternative assessment ni, dalam task what they have to do. Lepas tu barulah kita detailkan apa yang mereka perlu hantar, the end product, which is the report. So saya bagi tahu, lepas dia dah buat step 1, 2, 3, dia kena plan and prepare a report. Dan report tu perlu ada apa-apa. Dan kalau kita lihat dekat situ, saya dah bagi indication lah setiap section tu berapa panjang and so on dekat situ. So all that I would like to emphasize ialah bila kita tulis walaupun alternative assessment, perlulah soalan tu ada arahan-arahan yang mana markah tu akan jatuh. So kalau markah tu jatuh on description, kita perlu ada task ataupun arahan yang go through that part, that description part tu. So kalau kita audit lah, kalau macam di Singapore pun bila kita audit, kita akan check benda ni lah. Kita akan check, okay, first of all kita akan check does your assignment ni address learning outcome. Sebab tu learning outcome kita letak dekat atas kat situ. Kalau kita tengok constructive alignment. Lepas tu kita tengok juga, does your rubric measure learning outcome? So rubric saya measure tak learning outcome? Kalau saya tengok kat sini, learning outcome saya student kena describe. Memang saya bagi markah on description. Okay. Lepas tu saya pula suruh student not only describe, lepas tu cakap pula macam mana dia influence technology application. Saya tengok tak student buat tak engineering application ada dekat dalam. So markah juga diberi kepada learning outcome. Soalan ataupun arahan juga, sebab tu saya kata arahan-arahan ni mestilah ditulis also need to be related to the rubrics that you design such that dia memberi markah kepada learning outcome. So itu dari segi arahan lah. Lepas tu kita bagilah sikit apa yang kita expect pada pelajar dan kita bagi tahu duration when student need to submit. So that is in terms of dia punya arahan. Dari segi flexibility, because this is an example of alternative assessment. Jadi kat mana flexibility-nya? As I mentioned again, flexibility-nya tadi dari segi saya menggunakan real world tadi tu, tapi saya bagi student sendiri pilih apa real engineering application. Lepas tu saya bagi student choice yang nombor 9 ni. Okay. So saya juga bagi student, in fact dekat authenticity ni saya bagi dua mode lah untuk authenticity tu. Satu ialah jenis rock, satu lagi dari segi jenis dia punya application. Okay. So that is in terms of how do we support alternative assessment dalam assessment instruction. Saya belum discuss lagi macam mana kita nak support student dari segi feedback. Sebab kebiasaannya yang saya nampak lah, kekurangan bila pesyarah implement alternative assessment. Alternative assessment ni patutnya sangat strong. Selalu kita bagi arahan kita gitu je, ataupun kita bagi arahan verbal. Dalam kelas kita cakap, oh you kena buat macam ni. Tetapi bayangkan kalau student kita missed apa yang kita cakap and it is not recorded, so student may miss the opportunity to perform in alternative assessment in a correct manner. Yang kedua, bila kita tak tulis arahan kita dengan teliti. Saya nak cerita sikit kes sebenar di UKM, subjek MPU mata pelajaran umum. Mata pelajaran umum ni selalunya memang kita pakai alternative assessment. Kita selalu bagi project based ataupun kita bagi student experiential learning kan. Community engagement, experiential learning. So bila kita bagi student project based, case based, challenge based, bila kita tak tulis arahan kita dengan teliti, ada sekali ni apa yang berlaku di UKM lah, student pergi keluar. Bila kita kata keluar, dia keluar daripada kampus untuk cari data dalam projek ni. So what happen is that bila dia keluar daripada UKM, keluar daripada KL, met an accident dekat negeri lain. Jadi pensyarah panik, pensyarah tanya, so macam mana saya yang suruh student buat assignment tu. Jadi student ni sekarang accident. Adakah saya accountable? So kami punya team ni, MPU punya team ni, kami cakap okay, you ada tak assignment instruction pada pelajar? Dia kata ada. Okay, let's go through your assignment instruction. So true enough, bila kita check dekat dalam assignment instruction dia memang tidak ada menyuruh pelajar keluar daripada premise untuk mendapatkan data. Itu students punya sendiri yang punya decision, therefore lecturers cannot be pinned accountable for that particular accident. So all I'm saying is that assessment instruction ni is not only for student to be able to perform dalam alternative assessment, tetapi it also help lecturer to be safe lah in whatever that you do. Also it demonstrate constructive alignment yang kita worry lah, yang kita tanya tadi pasal GSU. So that is assessment instruction. Ya, assessment instruction ni masa saya train pensyarah di UM it takes a while jugalah untuk pensyarah nak mahir tulis. Bila saya coach, saya rasa 3-4 kali baru cantik lah assessment instruction tu. Okay. So, ada soalan sampai sini?
Okay, insyaAllah. Maybe doktor kita boleh buat ini kemudian. Okay, ada soalan apa-apa ke? Sorry, this is just nak remind kita punya masa pun ada agak suntuk. So maybe panjang.
Okay. Kalau tak ada, so sekarang ni disebabkan oleh tajuk yang diberi kat saya ni tadi ialah alternative assessment, flexible assessment and student engagement. Jadi saya just nak tunjuk dekat situ tadi, bila kita pakai alternative assessment, bila kita buat secara collaboratively, obviously memang akan ada student engagement, dan dalam masa yang sama kita nak enhance student performance. Macam mana kita nak enhance student performance? Kita perlu bagi student feedback. Kita suka tak suka, we have to give student feedback. So saya just nak go through sikit tentang macam mana nak bagi feedback. So the best feedback, macam tadi saya dah demonstrate macam mana nak tulis assessment instruction, dan rubrik tu mesti align pada learning outcome. For your information, untuk feedback pun perlu align pada learning outcome. Kita tak boleh attack student personally. Just ikut cara kita tak buat lain yang itu tak boleh. Feedback kita pun mestilah kepada learning outcome tu juga. Strictly. Lepas tu feedback kita kena timely. Jadi macam saya suruh student saya submit. So seminggu sebelum student submit, saya bagi feedback. So saya just nak check for time. So bila saya bagi feedback tu, so saya ada letak note sikit kat sini. A good feedback tu should have benda-benda macam ni lah. First of all, kita kena bagi student sikit motivation, bagi tahu apa strength yang dia dah achieve so far dalam dia buat projek tu. Lepas tu baru kita cuba cari areas for student to improve. Lepas tu bukan kita bagi jawapan macam mana student nak improve, tetapi kita bagi strategies how to improve. Lepas tu kita jangan tegur banyak sangat lah. So moderately. Yang penting bila kita bagi feedback, in order for student to perform, feedback ni bukanlah bila kita dah bagi, that's it. Kita kena track sama ada student response ke tidak kepada feedback tu. Okay. So kalau student tak respons kepada feedback, we must find out kenapa student tak respond. Dan therefore kalau student tak respon, biasanya performance dia memang tak improve lah. Tak improve. Jadi kalau secara online, feedback ni kita boleh buat menggunakan sama ada pakai forum punya feature ke, pakai feedback punya feature ke, ataupun there is another feature dekat dalam Moodle, nama dia workshop. This is where kita boleh suruh student buat peer feedback. kita bagi student kepada kumpulan dan kita dah siapkan feedback form dekat situ, so student will actually tengok another student punya work dan dari menggunakan feedback form yang kita dah sediakan tu, student should be able to bagi feedback lah based on the rubric yang kita dah letak dalam feedback form tu. So the beauty about guna workshop ni yang kawan saya dah research lah, student not only learn how to give feedback. Satu, kita kena train lah student macam mana nak bagi feedback. Yang kedua, dia learn daripada tengok orang lain punya kerja. Sebab dia kena assess kan kawan dia punya kerja. Jadi dia learn daripada orang lain punya kerja. So dalam masa yang sama, they themselves learn how to be a judge. Maknanya dia dah start develop dia punya evaluative judgment punya skill dekat situ. So saya nak keluar daripada PowerPoint ni sebab saya nak share sikit how I support my student through feedback lah. So dekat sini, so boleh nampak ke saya punya screen ni?
Boleh atau boleh? Video
Boleh nampak video saya besarkan sikit So kalau kita tengok dekat sini, satunya saya terangkan pada pelajar tentang assessment instruction. Because kita tahu ni kadang-kadang bila bagi dia alternative assessment, dia buat saja, tetapi dia tak baca pun assessment instruction tu. So sebenarnya saya go through dengan student assessment instruction. So you can see from this, saya tak play lah sebab masa dah suntuk. You can see bila saya explain dekat diorang, saya pull out balik semula saya punya assessment instruction. So saya bagi tahu you have to go through step 1, step 2, step 3. So saya bagi tahu why you have to go through step 1, why you have to go step 2. So saya kata assessment instruction ni bukan kita tulis saja je. Sebab kenapa contohnya score dekat bahagian description tadi tu. Okay. So lepas tu dalam masa yang sama, tadi saya kata student selalu dia akan struggle macam mana dia nak link subject content dengan application. Contohnya ni student punya application. So how do I help the student to link subject content? So apa saya buat dekat sini ialah saya pull daripada ini student saya yang pilih site ni untuk diorang discuss pasal slope. So group dia dah pilih slope tu. So saya bagi tahu sekarang ni macam mana dia nak guna PowerPoint dan bahan yang kita dah bincang dalam minggu pertama tu pada engineering application yang student pilih tadi tu. So you can see during the feedback session, I model to my students how is it that from the engineering application tu you go back and refer to your notes that we have gone through during the first week lesson dekat situ lah. So saya tunjuklah dekat student which part of the PowerPoint yang dia orang perlu gunakan dan macam mana daripada PowerPoint tu now they should again go back to the instruction tu. Lepas tu macam mana sekarang ni dia nak relate balik semula kepada apa yang dia all buat. So that is roughly how the feedback session tu is being done lah with the students sebenarnya. So saya nak tanya sampai situ ada tak soalan dulu?
You boleh encounter dan you boleh discuss lah.
So these are just an excerpt lah daripada apa yang saya bincang dengan student. Kalau saya nak pergi kepada how to use assessment, saya juga sebenarnya ajar student macam mana nak buat jigsaw 5.50. Kalau saya boleh tengok dekat minit 5.50.
You all akan gunakan untuk assignment 1.
dan juga assignment 2. Sebab assignment 2 nanti akan lebih hebat lah. Sebab assignment 2 nanti, kenapa saya kata lebih hebat, dan you all kena tahu semua benda bagi setiap bullet ni. Walaupun dia punya topik dia akan berbeza lah, it will be on the slope. Sebabnya
saya just nak pause dekat situ. In this session, apa yang saya buat adalah saya explain kepada student how do they have to manage dia punya collaborative work. So saya ajar student macam mana nak buat jigsaw dalam kerja kumpulan. Maknanya dan saya juga ajar student kalau saya boleh keluar daripada video ni. Sebab at the end of the day, alternative assessment ni kalau kita tengok, boleh nampak PowerPoint saya balik? Bila kita cakap pasal alternative assessment kita selalu akan suruh student buat secara berkumpulan, collaborative environment. So bila student buat secara berkumpulan, kita suka tak suka, kita perlu pastikan collaborative learning criteria ni kita bantu untuk bangunkan untuk pelajar kita. Apa yang kita maksudkan learning criteria ni, collaborative learning criteria ni, bila student kita work in group although kita tak measure pun group work pun tak apa, but we still need to develop these skills amongst our student. Kita perlu bantu student untuk satu, assess dia punya group performance. Macam mana kita nak bantu student untuk assess dia punya group performance? Kita boleh go through dengan student dia punya progress sheets. Kalau kita tengok dekat dalam ni, saya duduknya saya minggu 1, minggu 2, minggu 3. Daripada situ saya letak kat meja, ikut minggu tu saya bantu student saya untuk dia themselves see now secara visually, dia progress ke dia tak progress, dia pergi go round and round same point ke tidak. So progress sheets yang saya pakai dekat sini lah, kalau saya buat PBL, saya pakai PBL form macam ni. So saya pakai PBL form. So daripada PBL form ni sepatutnya jawapan yang dia sepatutnya cari untuk minggu 1 akan perkara yang sepatutnya dia akan cari pada minggu 1 akan menjadi jawapan kepada minggu kedua. Duduk dekat kolom ni and dia akan berkembang. So basically bila kita work dalam alternative assessment, sebab tu tadi flexible assessment dengan alternative assessment fokusnya ialah proses, learning process tu sendiri, how much student learn how to learn. Yang itu yang sangat penting. Sebab tu kita kena bantu pelajar untuk buat regularly dia punya self group functioning, reflect on their group functioning. Group ni okey ke tidak? Semua orang mainkan peranan ke tak? Selalunya saya akan tanya dengan student, what role are you actually having to do in your group? Kalau you tak buat role you, apa kesan kepada you punya outcome ataupun produk. So similarly kita bantu student untuk develop dia punya interpersonal skill. So dalam interpersonal skill ni normally kita tengoklah, kita siap-siap dah warn dengan student. Selalunya saya dapat soalan macam ni daripada pensyarah. Macam mana doktor dalam alternative assessment? Adakah student bila buat alternative assessment and flexible assessment, student tak cheat? What do you think? Have you come across student hantar report sama macam report student last year ataupun sama macam report group lain? So that also means that bila kita bagi student alternative assessment ataupun flexible assessment sekalipun lah, cheating can still occur. Tetapi kita boleh sebenarnya find strategies on how student may get away from having to perform cheating. Satu yang kita boleh check, saya kata kalau kita embrace kriteria ni, selalunya memang student memang tak boleh cheat dan jarang kita dapat report yang sama. In fact saya pun tak dapat report yang sama. Sebab saya akan check individual accountability. So macam mana saya check individual accountability and positive interdependency ni? So saya just nak tunjuk dekat sini. Bila saya check positive interdependency ni, saya bagi tahu dengan pelajar, kalau misalnya macam dalam dalam assessment instruction saya tadi, saya suruh student nanti bila student bagi kerja, kalau saya tengok balik dekat sini, obviously diorang akan bagi task lah. Sebabnya 4 orang, jadi kat sini ada 4 bullet, selalunya diorang akan bagi seorang in charge 1 bullet. Dan selalunya bila dia in charge, setiap orang in charge 1 bullet, dia tak communicate ke, masing-masing buat hal sendiri, last seorang compile je kerja tu. Tu yang kerja tu tak jadi kohesif. So apa yang kita maksudkan dengan interdependency lah, saya bagi tahu dengan pelajar, bila dia all buat benda ni, saya akan check cohesiveness of their write up. Sebab tu saya ada beritahu dekat sini lah. Dan waktu feedback saya tekankan tentang cohesiveness about their write up. Dan dalam assignment 2 pula, saya bagi tahu dengan dia all, kalau dia all in charge bullet nombor 1 pun, saya selalu pakai interview. Saya buat interview tu dalam group, tetapi markah interview adalah individual. Satu lagi ialah bila kita buat alternative assessment and flexible assessment, kita kena plan which part of assessment tu yang kita nak bagi markah individu dan which part yang kita nak bagi markah kumpulan. Report markah kumpulan tetapi interview markah individu. So waktu interview tu lah saya akan tanya, kalau kat sini student A yang kena buat bullet 1, saya akan tanya student C pasal bullet 1. Saya tak akan tanya student A pasal bullet 1. Jadi bila saya dah terangkan that is the kind of assessment that I will give to them, so student automatically dia akan take care of interdependency ni. Bila kita kata interdependency ni, maknanya kalau orang yang in charge bullet A, dia kena pastikan student B, C dan D tahu pasal bullet A luar dalam. Supaya waktu interview tu, kalau saya tembak soalan tu, siapa pun boleh jawab sebenarnya. So that is positive interdependency. So normally with that, dan because of that, selalunya setiap pelajar tu dia sangat accountable lah. So dia punya individual accountability dia become very high. So because of that, selalunya kita tak ada dapat masalah rider lah, sleeping partners lah and all that lah. So kalau kita buat, kalau kita bantu pelajar untuk develop positive interdependency dalam kita punya alternative assessment. Yeah, so that's what it is. But
okay, Doktor, sorry, kita ada soalan dekat dalam chat. Dr. Heidi bertanya, berapa ramai pelajar dalam satu lecturer dan adakah level of instruction akan berubah? Contoh kalau katakan pelajar senior tahun 3 dan 4, mungkin instruction level berbeza dengan junior.
Dia punya level of instruction tu, kalau kita tengok format dia tadi sama, cuma level of instruction dia tu tadi, as I mentioned, dia bergantung kepada kita punya taxonomy level. Is that what it is? Soalannya?
Saya rasa lah mungkin ni Dr. Mak Khairi mungkin nak tanya sikit ke in detail. Okey, dia kata okey, betul lah.
Jelas, saya Khairi. Assalamualaikum.
Ya, Assalamualaikum. Boleh.
Maksud saya kat sini, apa ni contoh, mungkin ada untuk pelajar tahun 1 mungkin dia baru masuk universiti kan, dan kemudian dia tak faham lagi cara assessment di universiti, so kita bagi dia more details lah. And on instruction tu contoh report kena tulis macam ni ke, ataupun you must have this point kan, tapi one day goes to third year, 4th year, dia dah faham how they do the grouping macam ni kan. So boleh kita skip kat certain point macam tu.
To certain extent boleh, tetapi itulah saya kita boleh, macam mana saya nak kata sebab curriculum design ni sebenarnya dia tidak boleh satu subjek, dia design subjek dia independent of subjek-subjek lain. Kalau kita tengok dalam OBE, curriculum design ni sepatutnya satu subjek punya design dia akan berkait dengan another subjek. Sebab tu kita ada dalam borang kita tu, kita kena declare transferable skill. Jadi kalau misalnya as you mentioned, contohnya subjek you memang suruh student buat alternative assessment, dia kena work in group. Jadi kita tak payahlah nak detail-detail sangat tentang macam mana they should form a group, this and that kan. Sebab kalau program tu punya curriculum telah pun design dengan baik, sepatutnya macam mana student nak form a group, teknik nak form a group, behave in a group, communicate in a group tu semua dah dilatih at the lower years. Jadi saya tak tahu di UTM benda tu adakah dibuat seperti itu ke tak. Kalau misalnya you tak sure dan tak ada evidence yang benda tu pernah dilatih sebelum tu, as a lecturer, selalunya saya galas je lah atas bahu saya. Sebab tu macam kes yang ini, saya tahu student walaupun dia second year, patutnya dia dah pernah work in team. Tetapi saya tengok memang teamwork tidak berapa berlaku, tak berapa menjadi. Sebab tu dalam saya punya feedback, saya tekankan macam mana dia orang nak perform in a team, apa teknik yang dia orang perlu pakai. Dia perlu pakai jigsaw teknik contohnya, dan apa yang mereka perlu buatlah dalam jigsaw teknik tu untuk dia orang perform. So go back to your question, it depends lah. So at the end of the day kita nak performance tu tercapai.
Okay, baik. Harap dapat menjawab ya. Sorry, Dr. Aisha, is it possible if kita wrap up before 5:30?
Alright, okay.
So maybe before that ada satu soalan lagi dalam maybe last. Assalamualaikum PN daripada TS Dr. Muhammad Fuad. Dalam perspektif online learning atau MCO ni, elemen psikomotor boleh ke diakses? Jika possible, bagaimana best practice? Thank you very much.
Untuk psikomotor ni, kita boleh akses. Since soalan ni dah 2 kali keluar, saya takkan habiskanlah apa yang saya buat ni. Just before, saya dah wrap up sebelum saya address soalan tu boleh. So kalau kita tengok dalam saya punya bahan ni, saya dah tunjuk macam mana kita nak buat satu assignment yang kecil. Tetapi kita perlu juga ingat alternative assessment ni dan flexibility dalam alternative assessment ni boleh juga dibuat dalam one whole subject. Contohnya macam subject integrated design, kita buat the whole subject ni dalam bentuk alternative assessment. That is project based. Dan kalau kita tengok, you can see here the various types of assessment lah yang digunakan. Sebab tu to certain extent dia juga dikira sebagai fleksibel lah. Dia guna logbook lah, dia guna proposal presentation lah, dia guna macam-macam lah submission dekat situ. So various types of assessment being used in this particular flexible assessment yang melibatkan the whole course. So this is another example, dan saya juga bagi contoh-contoh pedagogical approach yang kita boleh guna dalam flexible and also alternative assessment dekat sini. Boleh guna studio based ke, experiential learning ke, challenge based yang saya dah pernah guna, which is very interesting indeed. Lepas tu kalau kita nak buat framework yang saya tunjuk tadi tu, once kita dah pilih contohnya kita nak pakai problem based, macam mana kita nak deliver pula dalam kelas problem based tu. So kita boleh pakailah benda-benda yang purple ni lah. Kita nak deliver pakai lecture ke, pakai think, pair, share ke, fishbowl ke, we can choose from any one of these lah. So this is not limited to those purple card yang saya bagi kat situ. So last kali sebenarnya kalau kita tengok, saya ada juga because dalam kursus yang sepatutnya 6 jam ni kalau kita tengok one of the learning outcome daripada kursus 6 jam yang UTM bagi kat saya 3 jam ni, ada minta sebenarnya untuk saya bincang pasal lecturer punya role lah kalau nak buat flexible assessment and also alternative assessment. Jadi saya sampaikan juga hajat tu. Dan kalau kita tengok dekat sini, inilah role yang pensyarah perlu buat kalau kita buat alternative assessment. So kita kena jadi informer ataupun assessor. So masa saya bagi feedback kat student saya tu, saya assess apa yang dia dah buat dalam masa yang sama, yang mana dia tak tahu tu saya inform. Tu sebab saya pull out balik saya punya PowerPoint saya tu yang saya tunjuk masa saya buat feedback tu. So lepas tu kita perlu banyak gunakan soalan lah kepada pelajar kita, questions supaya dia berfikir. Dalam masa yang sama kita kena dengar lah, dan dalam masa yang sama kita kena bantu student to reflect. Bila kita kata reflect ni, kita go to tanya dia pakai soalan-soalan reflektif. soalan reflektif ni adalah cara dia yang tersendiri tu. Itu sebab saya kata kalau nak buat flexible assessment, alternative assessment dengan pedagogical approach yang tadi tu semua nak kena mahir lah, sebab kalau tidak, kalau kita nak cakap pasal reflective question ni pun dah panjang lebar dah macam mana reflective question is all about. So lepas tu kita juga macam saya bagi tahu tadi, kita kena bantu pelajar. Kalau kita tahu sampai year 4 pun sebenarnya kalau student tak reti work in group, nak buat jigsaw and so on, kita take time lah bantu diorang untuk learn using a jigsaw technique. Kalau diorang tak tahu macam mana nak question kawan dia punya fakta bila dia berbincang dalam kumpulan, kita bantu pelajar untuk develop questioning punya skill. Dan saya pernah bantu pelajar saya guna teknik yang diperkenalkan oleh Profesor action learning punya teknik lah. Action learning punya teknik ni is getting student to get used on how to question saja daripada fakta yang ditunjukkan. So that is roughly what it is all about lah. So going back to soalan sekarang ni dalam MCO, macam mana kita nak buat practical. So dalam kes ni, currently saya punya research dengan projek yang saya buat ni, saya create satu micro credential. Subjek saya tu saya pecahkan kepada 4 modul. Subjek saya 14 minggu, jadi saya pecahkan kepada 4 modul yang 3 ataupun 4 minggu satu modul. Jadi untuk satu modul ni, dalam 4 modul daripada subjek saya tu, saya boleh pilih lah, this is micro credential punya contoh, tetapi still can be done in a full course lah. Saya boleh letak praktikal semua dekat hujung belakang, dan saya boleh asingkan praktikal komponen ni dengan harapan student balik ke kampus. Alternatively, saya boleh juga sekarang ni packagekan saya punya praktikal tu dalam bentuk praktikal juga, tetapi dalam miniature form. Bila saya kata miniature form, saya rasa kalau tunjuk video lambat kot, so saya tunjuk ni bagi cepat sikit. So saya panggil, kita panggil produk ni di UMP sebagai MCTO. Apa yang kita maksudkan dengan MCTO ialah Modular Course Tibet Online. Susah sangatlah pula. So apa yang berlaku dekat sini ialah student saya selalunya dia pergi lab. Dia pergi lab, dia kena buat source classification pakai SIF punya equipment di makmal. Tapi disebabkan sekarang ni dia belajar remote dekat rumah, jadi apa yang berlaku, that practicals longer can be done because students are not in the campus. So apa saya buat ialah saya miniaturizekan that practical punya aspek tu. Saya packkan dekat dalam package yang kecil ni. Nampak tak soft classification punya MCTO kit ni? Saya packkan dekat dalam package yang kecil-kecil ni, saya post kat pelajar. Jadi apa yang berlaku ialah student dekat rumah, dia buka package ni, dia buat soft classification, tidak menggunakan equipment makmal, tetapi dia menggunakan bahan yang saya bagi yang telah pun kita prepare di makmal. Jadi the actual steps on how they do the practical tu dia tengok through video, tetapi bahan tu dia dapat secara fizikal di depan mata dia sendiri yang saya post. Jadi daripada bahan yang dia dapat tu, barulah dia buat analisis, barulah dia buat classification, barulah dia kena justify, dan barulah dia submit through, kalau macam di UTM dia submit through ULearn. So that is how I modify all my practical session kepada miniature practical yang kita deliver kepada pelajar di rumah. So it's to certain extent it is like bringing the lab to your doorstep lah. So kalau kita tengok yang dekat belah kiri daripada package saya ni, yang ini Arduino kit. Ini untuk computer science, contohnya lagi lah mudah kan, untuk tak tak baik lah cakap mudah. Nanti orang computer science kata, you boleh lah civil, mudah lah you nak buat benda tu. So kalau kita tengok yang untuk computer science pula, contohnya kita pack Adreno kit tu kita pack, kita suruh student belajar programming pakai Adreno kit. Lepas tu macam my colleagues contohnya my colleagues di UM pula apa dia buat ialah dia gamified kan. Selalu kita gamified kan pula practical tu. Apa dia buat ialah selalunya sebelum MCO student datang lab, dia perlu programkan autonomous car untuk subjek programming whatever lah. Dia programkan autonomous car. Jadi lepas dia programkan autonomous car tu dia compete. Last kali standardized test dia ialah dia have to go through competition. Tetapi disebabkan oleh pandemik, so apa dia buat ialah student, so lecturer ada choice sama ada boleh suruh student beli autonomous car yang kecil ni ataupun lecturer sendiri beli dan post kepada student. Obviously student kena bayar lah sikit. Lepas tu student buat dia punya coding, lepas tu dia race. Tetapi kawan saya ni yang dekat UM tu ada sekali tu yang setahu saya dia buat ialah dia suruh student, dia tak nak post kepada pelajar autonomous car ni, dia suruh student buat coding, dia duduk di makmal dengan autonomous car ni, student akan race ataupun akan control autonomous car ni menggunakan student punya handphone daripada rumah dia orang to control the autonomous car yang dekat lab tu. So saya pun tak tahu macam mana dia orang buat, but that is what they did. So you can see, walaupun subjek praktikal, although it is a remote online, if we find a way, there will be a way. Similarly, kawan saya yang satu lagi, architecture, interestingly, she shared with me, selalunya dia suruh student pergilah KL ke, pergi mana-mana lah untuk tengok bangunan-bangunan di satu-satu tempat. Untuk dia discuss ataupun untuk dia ceritalah pasal subjek konten tu lah, katalah pasal architecture punya aspek lah inilah itu. So disebabkan oleh SCTO, semua orang tak boleh keluar rumah, tak boleh pergi KL, tak boleh nak tengok bangunan. So macam mana dia buat? What do you think? Dia suruh student masuk Google Earth. Daripada Google Earth, student boleh berdiri dekat jalan raya tu, tengok bangunan tu dan daripada situ explain. In fact, when they explore this method, it's more effective than student actually go there dan buang masa dan sebagainya lah. So sebenarnya boleh buat, insyaAllah. Okay? Saya rasa waktu kita dah tamat. Saya minta maaf sangat-sangatlah. Saya tahu kalau saya prepare bahan memang saya akan prepare lebih dari yang sepatutnya. I think that is all lah yang saya boleh share, and I do hope that it meet lah the request from UTM. And I would like again, saya would like to thank you. Thank you so much for bringing up this topic yang baru untuk saya. Saya pun learn a lot daripada topik ni lah. So thank you so much.
Alhamdulillah, thank you very much.
Over to you, Dr.
If possible, kalau Dr. Aisyah boleh unshare dan also turn on balik you punya camera because you about to wrap up and we have very short photo session dengan ni. Okay, so with that, sini pun masa dah pukul 5:30. Alhamdulillah, thank you very much Dr. Aisyah for all the sharing, for all the knowledge that you have shared with us. InsyaAllah semoga apa yang baik itu semua kita boleh ambil amalkan. Kita cuba kita inculcate that in our teaching and learning practice, insyaAllah. Especially I think the one to take away from here is how are we going to practice flexibility in our teaching and learning, especially in our assessment. InsyaAllah. So I think there's also some request, maybe insyaAllah in the future we can have. Ya, Doktor?
InsyaAllah.
Baik. Doktor boleh share your video? Is it possible? Or maybe also all the participant boleh share all your video also? Kami tak nampak. Okay. So I think. Okay, terima kasih. Okay. So for all the participants, we also would like to thank, and we also thank you again, Dr. Aisyah, for being here, for spending more than 3 hours with us, especially kalau rasa course dia memang tak cukup 6 jam, 3 jam ni memang very
Kalau 6 jam face to
bullet
face
train
tu
tadi insyaAllah. So apa
tengok you punya dokumen.
itulah. Subhanallah, and she is still energetic although already more than 3 hours talking to us, dan alhamdulillah, so that apa yang tu kita boleh kongsi bersama insyaAllah. So with that, we would like to thank you again. And sebelum kita bersurai, is there any last question from the participant? Okay. Ada Dr. Sazalin ada mention juga hope to have workshop on alternative assessment soon.
Sorry, Dr. KA,
Harap
Dr.
kita punya
Khairul
MCO ni
Anwar,
boleh berakhir lah. Ya, saya.
Dr. KA, this is Dr. Jaria and Dr. Asha. Thank you very much. PM for the sharing. Sorry for having so much content to put in within the 3-hour slot. Inshallah we learn more, and we will seek your consultation later on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Terima kasih Dr. Aisyah.
Welcome.
Okay, Syam boleh kita ambil some picture, foto beramai-ramai. Syam boleh, Syam? Masih lagi di ni. Okay, silakan.
Okay, boleh share video.
Yes,
Satu, dua. Alright, ready. Okay, 1, 2, 3, senyum. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3, senyum. Alright, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Terima kasih banyak. Sekali lagi kami mengucapkan terima kasih banyak-banyak. Terima kasih kepada yang berbahagia, Piano Aisyah, for all the sharing. Although memang banyak, lagipun memang banyak slide tu mungkin kita boleh jadikan sebagai panduan rujukan. Thank you so much for your very good effort. I think it's more than what we expected actually sebenarnya. Alhamdulillah, semoga Allah berkati segala ilmu yang telah diberikan Dr. Aisyah, dan sama-sama kita berdoa lah semoga apa yang kita dapat hari ini kita boleh